Now, here's the thing. It's a Thursday, but it feels like a Friday. By the way, it's like 95 degrees in here. Is that you? Did you hit the thermostat on the way in?
I did not.
Is it just me?
No, it's not. It's toasty.
Okay, so it's not just me. I thought perhaps the reason it's so warm in here is because Dave dropped off the hottest thing that I mean, you want to talk about cool, right?
Jake, if you move your head either to the right or the left, people watching on YouTube, Twitter, or Facebook can see what you're referencing.
Okay, so just throw up Dave's mic here real quick. So Dave is, and he didn't know I was going to throw him on the air, but this is awesome. He is a listener of the show, and Dave Chalfant. Did I say the last name correctly?
Correct, yes.
Okay, and you grew up in the Muncie area?
Muncie, yeah.
Okay, and you are I don't know if you'd say like a collector or you just have a hobby or whatever else, but this was very kind of you, and I don't mean to throw you under the bus here because now everybody's going to reach out to you for stuff, but I do want to sincerely thank you because this meant a lot to me, and that is the fact that you came across two things recently in your travels, and you picked them up, and you called me and said, hey, I think it'd be neat for you to have one of the two of these, and I love these as much as life itself. And and I think this is an original, right?
It is.
An Indiana Pacers 1970 ABA champions license plate.
Right.
Now, and then you have another one that has all 3 years they won it that is red, white, and blue. Let me hold this one up. So this one is awesome. This is the red, white, and blue ABA champions Indiana Pacers, and it's got the 3 years that they won it. Actually, somebody added the third year, the 73 season, 73-74. But this was very cool. You yourself, you said, a huge Pacer fan, correct?
Huge Pacer fan, and really what prompted it was just your coverage of the Pacers and the great run they had. I mean, you just added a different dimension, and it was such a great time, and I just wanted to say thanks.
Well, I appreciate that, and the thanks are reciprocated. Most notably, and my mom is thrilled for this, to know that somebody was listening to the show. So for that, we are extremely
Hey, not just your mom, my mom as well.
That's right.
I'm equally as part of this.
Eddie's mom, who got the Elio Castroneves half-eaten peanut butter cup, right?
I still don't know the status of that. I haven't gotten an update. I need to ask her.
It's still in your mom's freezer, I guarantee it. Dave, are you over when I say over, I don't mean like, you don't want to hear about it, but from an emotional standpoint, the disappointment, the frustration of the Miles Turner news that came out whatever it was earlier this week, as a Pacer fan.
I think the initial response was shock, and it stung a little bit that he went to Milwaukee, a little bit versus like a West Coast team, but now that it's kind of sunk in, I'm kind of optimistic about what the Pacers can do, with those extra dollars, and I trust their management. So, I'm still excited, still a huge Pacer fan.
Well, I'll tell you what, the news that we learned yesterday, we're going to get into, and that is, I think we now have a clearer picture as to where Indiana goes at the center position and where their roster is, and we'll talk about that plenty over the course of the show today. But I did want to bring you on because I want to thank you for the license plates. They are very cool, and I can promise you they will be displayed properly and treated with the reverence with which they should.
Thanks.
Well, the one that I have, I mean.
Thanks again, Jake. I really appreciate it.
I very much appreciate it, Dave, for coming in. And again, the license plate, which hangs just behind me now, it's awesome. It's got the old logo, Indiana Pacers, ABA champions, 1969. 1970. A lot to unpack today, including that news that I just mentioned. DeAndre Ayton is now, we know, going to be a Los Angeles Laker. Eddie, there was question about that because I don't know how serious it was, but by all indication, DeAndre Ayton came down to making the decision between the Lakers and the Pacers. I don't know, how much Indiana was willing to pay for that per se, but he is now a Laker, and I think even though we talked about, and I talked plenty about DeAndre Ayton from a schematic basketball standpoint, what he can do and how he can benefit Indiana if he had come here, the more that you learn about it, the more we read about it, Eddie, it does sound like, and this is not sour grapes, this is a guy that comes with a baggage that perhaps Indiana is better off not getting involved with.
Perhaps, and from what it sounds like from the reporting and the stuff that I've seen, Jake, is that when you look at where DeAndre Ayton ended up, Luka Doncic certainly played a big factor into this because, as we've noted with, Tyrese Halliburton tearing his Achilles, that was probably a factor for Miles Turner and the reason why the Pacers didn't re-sign Miles Turner. So the fact that DeAndre Ayton can go and potentially contend right away with the Lakers, who have Luka Doncic, a player that he was probably excited to play with from the get-go. Doesn't have to worry about missing time with Luka. He is still on somewhat of a team-friendly deal, 2 years, $16 million. So in total, he's getting paid, I think it was around $30 million, $34 million for the next season between the Lakers and the Portland Trail Blazers. And I think that's a fit and a need that LA needed. Now, he's not going to provide the rim protection that LA needs, but all arrows and signs now, Jake, point towards the Pacers bringing back a trio of the 4 centers that they had on the roster last year between James Wiseman, Isaiah Jackson, Tony Bradley, who is already back, by the way, because they picked up his team option, and Isaiah Jackson.
And Isaiah
Thomas
Jackson
Bryant,
and James Wiseman both coming off the same injury that Tyrese Halliburton just experienced. And so, therefore, and I think, look, Isaiah Jackson is wonderfully athletic. And in terms of once Halliburton comes back, you're going to have a year for Isaiah Jackson to kind of develop and grow and work on his game. But they still don't have necessarily the pick-and-pop center unless Thomas Bryant is one that they want to bring back. But we'll get into that plenty over the course of the show today. JP Shadrick, our friend from Jacksonville, going to join us 12:30. We're doing a double road trip in anticipation of getting set for the Colts season. Each day between now and camp, we will talk to somebody different from one of the opponents on their schedule this year. JP Shadrick, our buddy down in Jacksonville, will join us. And then we're also going to go to Pittsburgh because the Steelers are on the schedule for the Colts this year as well. And we'll have a conversation about 1:30 with, a lot of drama in Pittsburgh, a lot of change in Pittsburgh.
Jake, I thought we were calling this the company Camp Caravan. I don't know what car we're in. We're driving to get to from Jacksonville to Pittsburgh in an hour.
Are we taking around campers? Well, we're flying, Eddie. We fly everywhere. We're big time now, right?
Well, the Caravan, Jake, you don't fly. You're on like a bus or something.
That's true. For this particular situation, we're taking a company private plane. How's that?
Also, breaking news, Jake, for you. The half-eaten Elio Castroneves peanut butter cup is still in the hyperbaric chamber.
Really?
Located at Casa de Garrison.
Soon to be found on eBay, I'm sure. It is a Thursday that feels like a Friday, so we'll do a Good for the Heart segment as well coming up on the show. But I want to begin with another subject today, something that made me think about this particular step back into time, if you will. And I thought it was when I was surprised when I was looking up video of WTHR Indianapolis sports legend Don Hine and came across this promo from Channel 13 from the early 90s.
Don Hine Sports Final, tonight at 11 on News Center 13.
In the land of Dairy Queen, it's about the biggest scoop you've ever seen.
Now,
a full quarter pound of Queen's Choice.
I'm playing the Dairy Queen aspect of that for this
Dairy Queen
point.
introduces the Queen's Choice Big Scoop Cone.
Several years ago, I was doing the radio show with Derek Schultz, and we were on remote, and we're doing the show in Fishers, and we were at a restaurant, 3:15 in the afternoon, and I look up, and walking in, I see a large gentleman, and I say, well, that's Don Hine. And Don Hine, who was a legendary sportscaster, 33 years as a sportscaster in Indianapolis. Don Hine, who was a 3-time Sportscaster of the Year by the Associated Press, United Press International, and had played basketball at Northern Iowa for Norm Stewart, knew his sports without question, was a prep star in multiple sports in the state of Iowa, won about every award, got into every sportscasting Hall of Fame in the state of Indiana. And by the time that I was a young guy entering into the ranks in the most menial and gopher of areas, Don Hine was already a legend within and a Hall of Famer within the industry, an industry that I was still just trying to get footing in. And while it is disingenuous to say that our paths were consistently alongside one another, they did cross, and whenever they did, he was always extremely kind to me and supportive as, a sportscaster that was entering into his retirement. And when Derek and I were doing that show, I looked up, and here comes Don Hine, and he was eating an ice cream cone. And I said, oh, Don Hine. And he said, hello, boys. And he was eating his ice cream cone. This was probably 15 years ago. And he said, I'm just doing what I do every day. I go and get myself an ice cream cone from Dairy Queen, and I drive around and run around with the grandkids, and I had you guys on the radio and knew that you were in the neighborhood and wanted to stop in and say hi. And he sat and ate his ice cream cone and listened to us and could not have been more kind. So to find a promo of him leading right into a Dairy Queen commercial, I found to be touching. I mentioned all of that today because confirmed earlier today by Rich Nye of WTHR from Don Hine's family that Don Hine passed away at the age of 85, and he was a legendary figure in this market. He will forever be linked in many ways, or rather, our next guest will forever be linked to some great extent with Don Hine because of their paths at WTHR. Dave Calabro joining me now on the Rhinegeist Brewery guest line. Of course, recently himself retired from WTHR. Dave, unusual circumstances, I realize, but I know that you are out enjoying the weather today, but I appreciate you coming on to share your memories of Don Hine.
Absolutely, Jake. It's an honor to be on to talk about, we called him the Hiner, affectionately, Don Hine. Yeah, when I came to Indianapolis in 92, I was a sports director and was starting to think about his next chapter. And so we worked alongside each other for, I was trying to think about that, probably about 8 years before I took over the helm of sports director. And we stayed in contact through the years. And I love the Hine because he was always honest. You never questioned where you stood. Athletes never questioned where they stood with him. And he would speak his mind, a very opinionated broadcaster, which was kind of unusual back in the day, and that made him unique.
Well, the other thing, too, Dave, is, and I mean this in the best of ways, but he was kind of a broadcaster from the old school. Does that make sense? In other words,
yes.
he came through in an era where there was certainly a journalistic integrity that was expected, but also a genuine nature about it of being very clear in your thoughts on the way things were. How much did you see of that, and how much did he outwardly profess that skill set or that characteristic as opposed to just letting it naturally show itself?
Yeah, he definitely had his own way, and as you mentioned, the old school. He was the stick and ball guy, scores and highlights kind of guy, and then I showed up, and that really wasn't, I knew that was something you had to do, but I could tell the industry was, turning in a different direction. And so we had some interesting conversations through the years about how to approach stories and approach people, and he was a big Bob Knight guy. He and Knight had a very unique relationship, and I didn't quite, as a young broadcaster, didn't quite understand that relationship. But the longer I was around it, the more I understood what that was all about, and the treatment they gave each other, because they both were old school, hard nosed, basketball, X's and O's, everything is black and white, was kind of their approach to the world, and it was fascinating to be around all of that. And he always treated me greatly. I never, it had to be awkward for him. Here's this new young guy coming in that, he knows eventually I'm going to take his job. And he treated me great. I never had an issue with him. We always had a good give and take, a spirited good give and take on various things. Like I came up with the whole idea of Operation Football when I came there, and he looked at me like I was crazy. He says, no, we cover highlights. We don't need to be doing Spirit Awards and cheerleaders and Band of the Week and, that kind of stuff. And so, we had some spirited conversations about that back in the day. But then later on, I was like, oh, that actually ended up being a good idea, young guy, But, yeah, I love working with Hine. He was a character. He and Bob Gregory together were hilarious. Every day around 3 o'clock, you'd find him in the break room. And Don's wife, Judy would make cookies every day, and Don would bring cookies to work, and he and Gregory would sit in the break room and have their cookies and have coffee and discuss what was going on and laugh and carry on, and then they would get into work mode. But just a great guy. Sorry to hear that he's passed today.
Don Hine passing away 33 years at WTHR. He had spent 3 years prior to that in Peoria, Illinois, where he worked with Bob Gregory, as a matter of fact. Dave, one of the things I think that is truly that we overlook perhaps when talking about the Don Hines, the Chet Kopic, I guess, if you will, before that. But those in that one generation before is, if you go back and you look, and it really is remarkable, and I know that this was obviously applicable in your early years at 13, but if you go back right now and look, you're talking about guys that were doing 6 to 7 minutes per evening at 11 o'clock, and they're not just doing, here's what the Pacers are doing and here's what the Colts are doing and good night. It was, here are highlights of the Stanley Cup Final, followed by here's highlights of the Boston Celtics-Washington Bullets game, followed by look at this track event that took place at University of Pennsylvania. The skill set or the knowledge of sports had to be so much more versatile back then. Would you agree with that?
No doubt about it. It was very broad, and like you, I was just laughing. It was, one of the things I first did early on was to help him put in all the baseball scores. Hey, it's the Seattle Mariners playing a late game tonight. Okay,
right.
A whole different world, and Hine had that kind of depth to him. He could go deep on many topics, many sporting people, personalities. He had a great Rolodex. He could call people. I was texting with some other former Channel 13 guys today, and we were talking about how honest he was and how he wore his emotion on his sleeve, which was good and bad. It was hilarious, though, to be around him. Like Reggie Miller, I don't know if you've heard the story before. Reggie in his prime, we were in the middle of a playoff run, and Reggie was supposed to talk to the media, and we all waited like 20 minutes. You know how it is. We stood there and waited, a whole group of us. And Reggie walked up and said, "Hi, guys, I got to go." And Hine looked right at him and said, "Hey, Reggie, you're an asshole." Because he stiffed the media, And Don's like, "You don't have 2 minutes for us? Reggie, you're an a-hole." And then Reggie just looked at him, and he later laughed about that. That was Don Hine.
But he had he had a street cred, for lack of a better phrase, to be able to do that, because he'd been around forever, and it was just kind of like, look, it's almost like for a Don Hine back then, Dave, it honestly was kind of like, well, this is my town, man. Like, I was here long, the Marty Brenneman, I was here long before you got here, right?
Yeah, and I'm going to be here long after you leave, probably. That's and I always respected that he would, he would call people out in some situations like that. It's like, oh, well, good for you.
Dave Calabra's our guest, Ryan Geist Brewery guest line, talking about Don Hine. And I know that, I got to let you get back to fishing here in a minute, Dave, but I wanted to ask you this as well. One of the things that really impressed me, maybe more so now than in the moment, about Don Hine is this. And Don Hine, here he is, the sports director. He's the face of WTHR's sports department for, decades. And eventually that torch is passed to yourself.
Yeah.
And yet you were not afraid to go to the bullpen when Don Hine in his retirement would come out and help out on stories or do different things, and seemingly was always enjoying doing it, Don Hine was, but he then is accepting more of kind of a subservient role. I think it speaks a tremendous amount, not just about one's professionalism and humility, but also the human being they are, to be able to continue that friendship and accept that role later as things changed. What was your take on that?
Yeah, absolutely, Jake. I remember we were starting the weekend show. Channel 13 had one of the first weekend newscasts, and we actually had live sports, believe it or not, on those weekend shows. And Don was the first guy we went to and said, "Hey, would you want to do this? It's Saturday, Sunday." Getting up at 6 a.m. to come be on Channel 13 for a couple hours and do sports. After the career he had, that's like, do I want to go do that on Saturday, Sunday? No, that might interrupt with my fishing and sleeping in, and I would have to actually shave. And Don was like, "Sure, I would love to do that. I'd still love to be involved," and I always appreciated that about him for sure.
Dave, before I let you go, the other one that, and I'm going to assume based on the Indianapolis Motor Speedway that you crossed paths a lot with this gentleman. And by my experience, gentleman is the true word here. Dick Mittman was a graduate of Indianapolis Arsenal Technical High School. He was an Army veteran. He was served during the Korean War and then became a writer within the Indianapolis Star-News, and notably just kind of, I think, his passion towards auto racing led him to becoming not only a staple within the print version of covering the Indianapolis 500, but also part of the Indianapolis 500 Old Timers Club. And Dick Mittman also, we now know, passed away on July the 1st.
Mm-hmm.
I always thought a true gentleman that was, again, the old school writer with a passion for what he covered. But your recollections of Dick Mittman?
Well, I just saw that too, and thoughts and prayers for his family. Dick Mittman was just a joy to be around. And I remember being a kid in high school at Ben Davis, sneaking out of the track, doing reports and sneaking into spring testing, and he would be there. And I, of course, was a big avid reader of the Star and the News back in the day, and I knew who he was. And he treated me like I was, A.J. Foyt. I mean, he was so great to me and polite, and asking me questions about what are you doing, what's your dreams, what can I do to help you. And he always, I loved being in interview settings with Dick Mittman because he had this mind to think of questions. I was like, oh, that's a really great question. I wish I would have thought of that. He just had that quirky mind, creative mind, writer mind that I always respected. But yeah, both these guys you're talking about are both gentlemen who treated people the right way, did it the right way, did so much for our city, did so much for sports. Sports is blown up in Indianapolis, but you think back to Hine. Hine was the first guy to do, the Colts at the RCA Dome. He was at the Hoosier Dome. He did the first TV broadcast of that. The Pacers in the telethon to save the Pacers. That was Hine and Slick Leonard on Channel 13. That's the kind of guy he was. He was always there to step in and make sure things were going right in our sports city for sure.
Dick Mittman, by the way, is now reacquainted with his late wife, Pat. He is survived by their 3 kids, Randy, Julie, and Rick. Dave, since you had mentioned his family as well, wanted to mention them. And 2 guys that Don Hine and Dick Mittman, I don't know if the 2 of them were friends per se, but they certainly would have crossed paths.
Yeah.
And,
they were for sure.
They're probably now sitting there telling stories about the times they had to wait way too long on Reggie Miller and other such things, right? Dave, for you personally, obviously we see you out at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, but, you've had a couple of months now in retirement to grow a beard, and, knowing you've gained half a pound, but you're doing what in terms of retirement? Are you enjoying it?
I am playing. I'm on the play circuit right now. I was up in Michigan at a buddy's lake house for 5 days, fishing and eating and carrying on and skiing and, floating. And I love to fish, so I've been doing a lot of fishing. We're traveling. I've got a grandson now, so I've been doing some traveling. And I told myself and my wife I was going to take 6-8 months to just check out and do whatever I feel like doing. And I have zero regrets. People are like, do you miss it? I'm like, I miss people. I miss Jake. I miss, hanging out with people that are from a different cut of life than me. But I don't miss the daily grind. I don't miss the, oh my gosh, Caitlin Clark's got a hamstring injury. We got to be live. And, Miles Turner's going to take more money. Well, what do you think about that? And when you step away from it, you realize people live their lives a little differently than all of us media people who are consumed by that daily drill,
But by the way, Dave, Miles Turner's leaving for more money. What do you think about that?
Oh, I mean, come on, Jake. What do you think? Come on,
Hey, listen, we covered it a long time, right? I mean,
10 years, and Halliburton's out the next year, and me, frankly, for the Pacers, I wouldn't have done that. I mean, I think yes, he's a great defender, but dude, I can't tell how many times I was watching the game going, hey, Miles, get back down the court.
Yeah.
Hey, Miles, we're running a fast break here.
Uh-huh. Don Hine would have been yelling exactly that, right?
He would have. He would have asked him in the locker room, hey, Miles, tell me why that you can't hit a shot here in these crucial games.
Okay, lastly, Dave, and I appreciate the time. Dave Calabra joining us, Ryan Geist Brewery guest line. When you look back on the career of Don Hine, Dick Mittman too, for that matter, but both of these gentlemen, when you look back at it, if you wanted to say something right now to them, what would it be?
Oh, first for Hine, he has no idea. I think he knew what kind of impact he had on my life, and when they were going to hire me, him saying, "Yeah, I'll hang out with this joker and teach him the ropes." So, just a total grace mode of thank you to the Hiner. And the same to Mittman. It's a great tribute to the old school. And this is also my message to anybody who's listening. If you're mentoring other people or you're working with other people, man, pay it forward. Pay it forward. And that's one of the things I always learn from them is to treat people the way you want to be treated, and pay it forward. If you get the chance to give a young person a leg up and teach them your craft, whatever that craft may be, do it with grace and dignity, and put your ego aside and be that person.
Dave, I appreciate it. The fish are probably yelling at you that it's time to get back, in fact, so we'll let you do exactly that. But I know, obviously, kind of a last-minute thing, not the best of circumstances. Always good to talk to you, and go back to enjoying the fishing, all right?
Yeah, all right, you guys, thank you very much, and thanks for thinking of me to call me, and God bless Don Hine and Dick Mittman for sure. And thank you for remembering all the old-school broadcasters in town because, it's what makes Indianapolis special.
I agree, Dave. Appreciate it very much. Dave Calabra joining us, Ryan Geist Brewery guest line. Don Hine, Dick Mittman, two gentlemen who absolutely put their stamp on this craft of what we do, but more importantly on keeping people in Indianapolis informed, doing so with tremendous grace about them, and leaving Indianapolis in a place that is better than when they arrived because, as Dave mentioned, of their passion and contributions to this market. JP Shadrick covers the Jacksonville Jaguars. We will preview another AFC South foe, and we'll do it next. tour around to the different markets that represent or are represented on the Colts schedule, because it means that we get a chance to talk to some guys that we will talk to a couple of times a year. Always fun to have JP Shadrick on the program. He joins us on the Rhinegeist Brewery guest line. He, of course, covering the Jaguars for their website, also works with Westwood One and covering the NFL. He is a University of Alabama guy. He joins us now on the program. JP, I'll get right to this point, and that is the health status of Trevor Lawrence. Obviously, we saw him miss the end of last year. It has been some time. I mean, he had a pretty serious concussion, but the expectation, I guess, not only in the health of Trevor Lawrence, but what they need to do to keep him on that healthy path.
Yeah, first off, good to be back with you again. He had the massive concussion at the very end, but he also had a left shoulder injury where he was kind of scrambling and then decided to, dive and landed on his left shoulder, and it just wasn't right a lot of the year. So he had surgery on that off shoulder in this off season. So he's coming back and he's been fine in the off season program. He's been out on the field and has really not been too limited at all, especially later in the off-season program, minicamp and all that. So he's out there getting all the reps he needs. And then, I mean, the trick is, okay, is this new offense, another new offense for him, going to help protect him a little bit more somehow, either with play calling or maybe some upgrades on the offensive line? Do you have to coach it out of him a little bit? He does have that instinct of just kind of doing things himself sometimes that he probably doesn't need to do, and running into those situations. Now, the concussion, it was a headshot, and, we saw it happen after all that went down. But either way, if you're not even in that situation to begin with, then that's not even a topic. So there's a little bit of all that combined. Can they, in this new offense, give him an ability to do what he does very well, while keeping that aggressive mindset that he likes to have with his legs, but I mean, keeping the guy upright is the utmost priority this season. You can't miss 8 games a year with your starting quarterback or you're toast.
I have always felt, JP Shadrick's our guest. He is on the Rhinegeist Brewery guest line, Jaguars.com, where you can read his work. I have always felt with quarterbacks in the NFL, and I don't know, JP, what this number is, right? But there's this magic period where if it doesn't start to take footing, you start to wonder about the quarterback's confidence and just how much they feel like or start seeing the ghosts. Is Trevor Lawrence there at all? Is there any danger of getting into that territory?
I don't think he's there yet. Now, you got to remember, too, this will be his third offense in the NFL and now his 5th season. So there's a lot of that has to be done this offseason and get right, and verbiage and everything that goes with it, the style they're going to play with Liam Cohen's offense and Grant Udisky, the offensive coordinator. I think they've done a pretty good job of having him around this offseason and being with him, and it seems comfortable. We've heard that before. You got to go out and execute it. He's got some talent around him, right? I mean, Brian Thomas Jr. has an opportunity to be an upper echelon receiver in the NFL. He's already gone to a Pro Bowl with a lot of his stats from last year from Mac Jones throwing to him. So they've got to get some confidence together. They didn't really have a great connection early in the season, he and Brian Thomas. And then, of course, you throw in the draft pick this year and the guy who can do everything, and a running game maybe to go with it, some veteran running backs back there. I think early success is key. Right. If they start out and he's struggling, it's 0-3 or whatever the record is early in the season, it's a long season. It's a marathon. However, I think some early success in a new program with a new offense, with a quarterback who's getting a lot of money, and will have a lot of focus on him will be key. So they've done everything they can this offseason to make him comfortable. He seems confident. He's saying most of the right things. So let's go from there.
In terms of the pieces that have been put around Trevor Lawrence, let's talk about the Jaguars' offense, or I guess specifically both sides of the ball, JP. When you look at a year ago, the area that is in the most need, and maybe this is two different answers, of a schematic upgrade and then also those that maybe took a personnel upgrade on either side of the ball?
Yeah, I mean, so everything's so new the whole offense is new, right? All the coaching staffs, everything's new, right? But they could not, if it was 3rd and 1, it felt like 3rd and 5. Like they could not get short yardage figured out between the tackles. So offensive line, I think, was a big key there. They went and got 2 other veterans to play center and right guard in free agency this year. They've got a former first-round right tackle in Anton Harrison. And they got Walker Little, a guy who was a second-round pick, but he's been injured and in and out of the lineup and not really a regular starter. Well, this is his opportunity to go out and prove that he can be a long-term play in the NFL. He already got a decent contract to his second deal, but hasn't really been out there a whole lot. So they're hoping that it's an upgrade on the offensive line this year. There will be some competition there. They brought in some other people in the offseason too. So I think that's a priority on the off. You got to keep the chains moving somehow in that short yardage, and they just could not do that. Defensively, the whole idea is different. I mean, they had to really go change the entire secondary for the most part. The safeties are all new. All the guys that are there are pretty much gone. They've had to bring in more corner help. Travis Hunter could help some of that as well, probably as the 3rd corner on defense. Depending on how long he plays on both sides of the ball, that could be an upgrade in certain situations. Linebackers are pretty much the same, and the edge rushers, hey, those guys got to step up and have a big year too. I mean, Josh Hines-Allen, Trayvon Walker. Walker had 10 sacks last year somehow, but Hines-Allen fell off. You're not paying him $20-something million a year to fall off. He's got to be up there on that upper edge. So. And they would let people run right at them as well. So interior D-line is a real focus, and they've got some young ascending players they believe there that can compete, and we'll see what happens in training camp in the middle of the defense.
When you look at Jacksonville and their draft this year, the big name that jumps out is obviously the Heisman winner in Travis Hunter. Now, dynamic playmaker, dynamic athlete. Reality is, JP Shadrick, he can play either side of the ball. He's listed as a receiver. Will they use him in various ways throughout the field?
That's the plan. That's the plan. They have not hidden anything with that. They've, in the offseason program, would put him in both meetings, kind of coordinate the meetings throughout the day where he could attend both. And then at least the first few open practices that we were out there, okay, he's on offense. He's running routes. And, that's the more technical part of it. He's got to be precise with route running and find some kind of communication with Trevor Lawrence. And that was the idea, right? That's the one that's going to take the most time to really learn this. Then rookie receivers struggle no matter how good they are for the most part anyway. Just the nature of the game's different. And on the defensive side, as the offseason went, okay, let's put him out there 1 day a week on defense and see what happens there. Let him get that in the field, but most of the on-field stuff was at wide receiver. Then finally, the last day of the offseason program and veteran minicamp, he switches jerseys mid-practice and does both. And we're all out there to see it. It's like, okay, now this is full on. They were kind of building, I think, towards that. To see if he could just handle the load of it. Now, the load of it, it's a non-contact practice. I understand that. But, okay, I think that's the idea come training camp. Let's start him offense a few days here or there. Let's mix him on defense. It's a more reactionary position for him. It's going to be a lot of zone, I think, in the defense here. So you're facing the quarterback, and it's read and react, and that's what he does very well. So they're going to, I think, let him go, and then if they have to reel it back in some, so be it. But he'll play mostly receiver, and I think he'll be out there, like I said, probably as the 3rd corner to begin.
When you look anytime, JP Shadrick is our guest, Ryan Geist Brewery guest line, where you're hearing him. When you look anytime where a head coach is coming into a situation where they had been a coordinator previously, sometimes coaches, you find out, were great coordinators, and being a head coach means delegating or accepting or deferring responsibilities. When you look at the situation in Jacksonville, is it too early to know yet with Liam Cohen just exactly how that all plays itself out?
Yeah, I think we're just a little early because I mean, you hit it right on the head, right? You could have all the greatest plans in the off season, and your systems, and how are we going to review things, and all. And when it gets real in September, that goes really fast during a game, And if you're worried about the play calling, which he will be, he will call plays, Liam Cohen, and you got to worry about, should we challenge this call? What's any situation in game? And on the defensive side too, you got to be ready if you're needed there. You can't be back there worried about the offensive drive the next time out, because you got to be out there coaching the team. So there'll be a little learning curve with that. Preseason will be big to figure out the systems behind that, from the booth to the field and everything. But I think we're just a little too early, and you just don't know until it gets really real how a first-time head coach will be able to react, especially one that's calling plays. It's a heavy load. There's no doubt about that.
Last one, JP. I'm always curious of this, and I probably ask you this each time we talk, and that is, as you know, we get very nuanced and we get very esoteric in our snow globe of the team that we cover, and we start to think that the things that we notice about a franchise are what everybody's noticing. What is the outside Indianapolis thought process, perspective, opinion of the Indianapolis Colts and where they are?
Who's the quarterback? That's the number one thing that pops out. Do they have the correct long-term quarterback? Because for years they did, and that was the thing that really carried them to so much success over the years. Once if they figured it out, what's the style of the quarterback, right? How are we going to have to play defense this week? Because is this guy mobile? Is he going to be hurt and not out there, and you're ready for a backup? That's been the case a little bit the last couple of years. So to me, at least, that's what stands out about the Colts. It's all about that guy that's in the huddle and running the offense. I mean, it runs through that guy, and it's been inconsistent really since Andrew Luck there.
The Colts will face the Jacksonville Jaguars, of course, twice coming up here in the upcoming season. I'm looking at the schedule right now, and they actually face them for the first time in December. It's going to be cold, man, by the time we get to talk to you again, right?
Wow. I mean, at least you guys have a roof, so that's positive. And then
actually
here, it gets cold, but it's not like there.
Yeah, you know what? So December 7th, it's going to be good for Colts fans to go down there, because they'll be in Jacksonville first, and then it is right after Christmas. JP, you'll be bringing your winter coat up here if you own one to Indianapolis for that. But we look forward to talking to you certainly at that time if we could.
Yeah, sounds good. It'll be a few months, sounds like, but that'll be a busy December. There's no doubt about it.
JP, appreciate it as always, man. Enjoy the rest of the summer.
Have a great holiday. Appreciate you.
JP Shadrick joining us on the Ryan Geist Brewery guest line. In fact, yes, the holiday tomorrow, Independence Day, the 4th of July, coming on a Friday. We will not have a show tomorrow. That means we have Chicago's Pizza gift cards to give away today. Correct, Eddie?
Oh, yes.
And we can do that
some
next.
to give away.
Chicago's Pizza, 18 Central Indiana locations, 25 statewide. Just had somebody yesterday, kid you not, text me and said, man, I've been on a real Chicago's Pizza lunchtime kick thanks to you, Jake. And I said, that's what I do. That's what I do. So if you would like to dine at Chicago's Pizza, then give us a call right now at 239-1070 is the telephone number. Back into the Pacers situation clearing itself out. We will get into that next. Independence Day and it being a 3-day weekend, I was thinking about, just like this is perfect, right? Just Americana music. So much fun in terms of the parades that take place. I am admittedly, I do enjoy fireworks. I love them. I like going to a downtown civic fireworks show. I love the patriotism of all of it. I don't necessarily need the guy that is letting off, full-size military mortar bombs for 8 straight hours from his driveway. But, that's neither here nor there. But what a perfect way to enjoy the holiday than with, say, Chicago's Pizza, because of the fact that you're talking about, you want to talk Americana. One of the things that's Americana is Little League teams going into the pizza parlor at the end of the year, and a pizza place that is local to the community, which Chicago's is, been around since 1979, started right here in central Indiana, and has an Indianapolis heritage with it, and a story in every slice, because you're talking about places that are oftentimes the owners at each of the locations, they started working there years ago and have worked their way up and just have a pride and a passion for it. So certainly consider that for your party, or whether it be the lunch buffet or dinner over the course of the weekend. And we are happy to help facilitate that for a couple of people today. The Pacers, we now know DeAndre Ayton will not be their center for next year. And yes, it's kind of silly to sit here and talk about something that didn't happen per se, but I do think that it was in discussion. Perhaps DeAndre Ayton's camp is the one that was saying Indiana was a possibility because they were banking off of the previous flirtation from the Pacers. And maybe that would have been smart of them to do, right? To create that battle, if you will, or create a bidding war. If DeAndre Ayton wanted to end up in Los Angeles, which he is going to for 2 years now with the Lakers, and get that contract, it would have been in the best interest of his camp to have the Lakers think that there was another team out there that was pursuing him. Now, I don't know how much those teams are honest with each other. I don't know if the Lakers would be talking to Kevin Pritchard or Chad Buchanan and be, okay, shoot us straight here, guys, or, is this something you're interested in? Or, I don't know if that takes place or not. But I will tip the cap to whoever it was on Twitter. I can't remember who it was 2 days ago, 3 days ago, X, whatever you want to call it. When we were talking about Ayton, it's like, look, DeAndre Ayton ain't coming here. Like, save your breath. That probably was reality, but I think when you look at the situation at the center position for Indiana, you have to explore all possibilities because of the fact that they are now, and I think that deep down their ace in the hole, or their safety net, was they knew that they have, really, if you look at it, they got 4 different guys that they could choose from that are in-house to an extent. They can re-sign Thomas Bryant. You have coming back from injury Isaiah Jackson. You have coming back from injury James Wiseman.
Bless you.
Thank you. Both of them coming back from the same injury, the Achilles. And you don't know. Is Isaiah Jackson going to have – he is definitely thicker. When I saw Isaiah Jackson at the end of the year, I'm like, wow, he's gained weight. Now, is that good gain weight? In terms of because he was out with a ruptured Achilles, he was in the weight room every day? Or was that weight meaning because he had a ruptured Achilles, he couldn't run and couldn't exercise at full strength for 8 months and therefore put on weight? He had weight that needed to be gained. And I think he's an intriguing player. He's an intriguing player in terms, certainly, of pick and roll and those things and being able to play above the rims. James Wiseman would be in the same category. But I think Thomas Bryant is the only one that has the ability to shoot from the top of the key and stretch defenses like Miles Turner did. He just doesn't have the defensive fluidity and the lateral quickness that a Turner had.
And consistency. Like, just overall of play on the court. Like, he's a guy that plays with his emotions so much, Jake, that it gets in his way sometimes out there on the floor, where he gets too emotional, too amped up, and too, involved into the game emotionally, that it takes away sometimes from his play on the court. And that's probably why you saw the shift from Thomas Bryant to Rick Carlisle starting in the Eastern Conference Finals.
Yeah, I think a lot of that too. And yes, I don't disagree with you, Eddie. I have said that at times Bryant is an emotional liability. I don't mean that to say that he's, like a mental case. Just he starts going on overdrive, right? And he's got to slow down sometimes. I think a lot of why you saw Bradley on the floor in certainly the Eastern Conference Finals and then in rotation in the finals as well is they felt they needed more bulk on the low post between
Size?
Yes. I mean, well, like low post rooted size, yes. And squaring up as opposed to quick lateral movement guys, because Turner was struggling with just the physicality inside, and Bradley did that more than Bryant, who is obviously more of, the swinging and rotating around level big, if you will. We will continue that conversation. Coming up, by the way, we did Jacksonville. We'll do Pittsburgh. Bottom of the hour. Tony East coming up just about 1 hour from now. When we come back, something I saw last night, witnessed last night, there was good news for Eddie. I liked it too, actually, because I'm that kind of guy. I'll explain next. Eddie Garrison, what are your big plans for the 3-day weekend?
Let's see. Tomorrow I'll probably do some stuff outside in the lawn because I got to clean up some weeds. And then my family, Olivia, we're going to the Indianapolis Indians game tomorrow night.
That's right. You mentioned that.
Yep.
That's cool.
Got fever on Saturday and nothing on Sunday.
Now, did the Indians play also on? You said you're going. Oh yeah, tomorrow night's the 4th, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So they'll be doing their fireworks. That'll be a great show, and a great game too. I mean, I love. Speaking of baseball, that's one of the things that I was thinking about last night, and I was thinking that you and I keep forgetting this in our beer bet.
Yes.
You have the Toronto Blue Jays and the Marlins. You basically have run away with this, right?
Yeah, pretty much.
Listener Chad has the Cincinnati Reds, and who is the other team that he took?
The worst team in baseball.
Colorado Rockies, right?
Yes.
Not good.
Sorry, Chad.
I have the Athletics and the White Sox. Highest cumulative win total wins the beer bet and the Rheingeist Brewing, and it looks like we'll give you your choice between that or Surfside, one or the other. You're probably happy with both.
Ooh, that's
right?
a good debate.
Or both. I was thinking you had the Reds, but last night I got back. We actually I did something new last night.
What was that?
You know, all of the different old railroad lines are now being turned, like the Monon, are being turned into walking trails and et cetera.
Mm-hmm.
And this one, I'm probably way late to this party. I'm not necessarily normally up that far north. But the nickel plate line that is now, I say now, paved over, it's probably been a couple of years actually, but I had never been on it. Just went and drove and parked just south of 96th Street and then walked the nickel plate up to 116th, had dinner, walked back.
Now, is this with your girlfriend or your wife?
Now, Eddie, people that don't know that inside joke on the show are going to start thinking that you're calling me out here as being some sort of a polygamist, right?
Yeah, maybe.
No, it was with Shannon, yes.
Now,
So-
is any of the dogs? Were any of the dogs?
No,
with you?
but one of the dogs had his first vet appointment today, 32.4 pounds. Thank you. So we, just the two of us, but then we got back and I turned on baseball. And I turned on the Reds game, and I turned on the Reds game right as, did you watch the game last night or listen to it either
I
one?
certainly watched it, yes.
I turned it on right as the Boston Red Sox had a complete defensive meltdown.
You saw that?
Yes.
Oh, my gosh, that was comical.
What was going on there? They got involved. Did you play, when you were a kid in backyard baseball, did you play hot box? That's what we called it.
Excuse me?
When you get, yes, I know, a different connotation in 2025. If you have, give me two guys.
Especially with my interest, Jay.
Give me two guys that you used to play backyard baseball with.
Oh, I didn't really do much backyard baseball, Jake. I was at it. I was playing baseball.
Okay. Give me two guys that you played backyard sports with. Football, baseball, whatever. Two of your buddies growing up.
Zach, and then I can't remember. It was one of his neighborhood friends. I can't remember his name.
You had to remember two names of friends when you were a kid, and you can't remember half of them?
No.
Okay. So Zach and what's his name? Okay.
We'll go with Matt.
Did you ever play the game where you have two guys while you're playing pitch and catch, and then one guy who is the base runner between the two, and that you run back and forth trying to tag them out, trying to get back and forth from base to base?
I think there's a show on Netflix that is based off this game.
Seriously?
I think Squid Games is pretty much what that is.
Okay. Did you play it though? A rundown, a baseball rundown.
Yes.
Which is what you had last night, right? In that and then as a team, you get befuddled when you have two of them happening at once and you don't know where to go with it. And that happened to the Red Sox last night. It was one of the most amateur hour defensive lapses I'd seen from a baseball team.
Yeah, there was a ball hit in the outfield and it drops. I think it was between the shortstop and the left fielder. Reds had the bases were loaded, so the guy on third scores, and then Christian Encarnacion Strand was on second, blows through the stop sign to the third base coach. And instead of throwing the ball home, they throw it to third, and Encarnacion Strand scores, and the catcher throws it to third, and Santiago Espinal goes first to third on the ball. That probably went 150 feet.
So you did not play hot box. My buddy Larry says two things. Larry from KSR, which is KSR is the best, by the way. The nickel plate hasn't been open for 6 months, and it's not completed everywhere. So, yes, I guess we were because that's what I loved about it. It was very quiet. And yes, he played hot box as a kid. Now, the other question is this, Eddie, and I've had this ongoing debate with Derek Schultz for 15 years.
Okay.
Okay? When you played backyard baseball, and if you didn't work with me here and pretend you did.
I did.
When you played backyard wiffle ball, baseball, whatever it may be, and you used a ghost man.
Yep.
Ghost man on second, right?
Uh-huh.
If you have a ghost man on second and you hit, let's say that we are playing, I'm pitching to you. You've got a ghost man on second. It's scoreless. I pitch it to you and you hit a double.
Mm-hmm.
Give me then the box score. The runners are on where, and the score is what?
If you hit a double, ghost man on second, the runner on second is scoring.
Thank you. Thank you.
Duh.
You would be shocked the number of people that, and we're talking about this because it's Independence Day weekend, and yes, it's baseball Americana. I know that we have the Pacer Center situation that we just talked about. I know that the Fever, obviously, we will get back into over the course of today. Tony East going to join us, matter of fact, 35 minutes from now. I know that we're going to talk a little Colts scheduling. But when you talk about Americana sports Independence Day weekends, you get hot dog eating and you get baseball, right?
Yes.
And with that, in backyard, there is no way. For example, this has been, and you'd be shocked how big a debate this is with people. And I know it's a tired subject, but I bring it back every once in a while because I'm convinced that there's no way that you can think other than the way that I think on this. And that is what you just said. The ghost runner moves the same number of bases as the batter accomplishes by the hit.
Mm-hmm.
The ghost runner does not need to be forced in. If you have a ghost man on second and you hit a double, unless your ghost man is Bartolo Colon,
oh, nice pull.
he's going to score every time, right? The ghost man moves the number of bases that you hit. It's very simple, right?
Yes.
I'm glad you agree with me on that.
It was always funny. I'd play that with my brother and sister growing up, so it was those two versus me. And I always make up stuff like, oh, no, he tripped and fell. He got out at home. And like, no, he didn't. I was like, yeah, he did.
And they just would go along with it?
No.
I mean, honestly, right? The Colts situation is interesting in talking to JP Shadrick when I'm always fascinated by this. I'm always intrigued and fascinated by asking other markets what they think of the Colts. And this is not meant as a knock on them. Here in Indianapolis, we have a passion for the Colts. The Pacers closed that gap a little bit, but whether you like it or not, whether you want to admit it or not, whether you don't want to see you always want the kids to get along. But the reality is that I'm not going to say rivalry, but when it comes to the two pro sports leagues in this town, the Colts and the Pacers, they both clearly want the other to do well. It's better for the city. It's better for the fans. It's better for optimism. It's better for, what do they say? Like the high tide raises all ships, right? So, yes, the Colts want the Pacers to do well, and yes, the Pacers want the Colts to do well. But deep down, they both would like to be the alpha of the market. I don't think there's any question about that. And it's understandable. They want to be the top biller. And I understand that. And so I'm always curious, like the Pacers have closed that gap locally. And, last night when we were at dinner and I'm walking around, I'm seeing a lot of Pacers shirts and everything else, but it's also coming right off of their season. And, there's a lot. They are very topical right now. But the NFL is never out of topic. It's always in the mainstream of conversation. It's always in the forefront of the public, conscience when it comes to talking about sports in this country. But the Pacers have been a pretty random franchise from a national standpoint. I mean, even when they went to the finals, and I know it, I tire as much as anybody of the whole argument from people like, oh, big market bias and the networks only care about New York, Boston, and L.A. and those things. I get it. But at the same time, as somebody who travels around a lot, if you see somebody wearing a Pacer hat or a Pacer T-shirt, you're pretty sure they're from Indiana. If you see somebody wearing a Pacer shirt, you're like, oh, man, you're from Indiana, and you're in the Atlanta airport, you know they're from Indiana for the most part.
Do you think that number of fans outside of the state have grown to like where non-Hoosiers or non-people from Indiana are fans of the Pacers?
Excellent question, Eddie.
And you would know because of your road trip recently.
So when I was I was stunned when we were at the Baseball Hall of Fame. I bought my ticket to the Baseball Hall of Fame. You walk into the museum. I didn't realize it, but when you walk in and you go to the right, the shrine room is right there on that ground floor. But there's a huge stairwell right when you walk in at the entrance. So I just assumed that everything began there on floor number 2. So I walk in, and there were 2, when I say young, I mean they look like they were maybe even like high school or early college year, young men, kids working for the Baseball Hall of Fame Museum, which, by the way, every name tag underneath it tells what team that person is a fan of.
Really?
Every single one of them I saw, it said Yankees fan. Every single one of them. There was not a single non-Yankees fan. But anyway,
gross.
I was wearing a Pacer shirt. And the 2 kids immediately were like, oh, go Sirs. And they're like, man, it was so what a bummer about Tyrese Halliburton, da-da-da. Walk up the steps. There had to have been 10 to 12 people that commented to me about the Pacers, and notably young kids. Now, I think what we saw, Eddie, is that the Pacers it's a great question. Are the Pacers now becoming a national brand, or are they transcending?
So when I was watching like news coverage of this, when they were in the NBA Finals, one of the stations in town was outside Gainbridge Fieldhouse leading up to, I think it was game 3. And they were interviewing a couple that were from Kansas City. And the anchor out there asked, how long have you been a fan of the Pacers? And they said, after the Milwaukee series. And they flew out for game 3, or drove out here for game 3, thought they wanted to witness the NBA Finals and celebrate their 1-year wedding anniversary.
Now, do you think that was because they're Pacer fans, or because it's a market that's close enough that they could enjoy an event like that?
I believe the question was asked, and the response was just the way they play basketball is very fun to watch.
I think that's it. I think they have. So these young kids all were aware of the Pacers, and it was like, wow, this is like the new shiny toy. And if you look at Golden State and the Splash Brothers, Golden State kind of had that period where their colors were changed to like a darker blue with that weird looking warrior guy with I guess it was technically a helmet that he was wearing of some sort, but he kind of looked like, I don't even know how to describe what, one of those guys that wears the outfit that covers all the way over your head and everything. They went through a weird phase there where their best player was like Monte Ellis, right?
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden the Splash Brothers and Steph Curry come along, and they are the thing. And I feel like the Pacers broke through, Eddie, where they introduced themselves, and people they walked into people's homes and introduced themselves, and it was like, oh, we have new neighbors, the Indiana Pacers, and they're really funny. We had them at this party, and like they were the life of the party. Everybody loved them. They were fun. They brought over a great dip, and they were great. But the injury happened, and now you wonder if that immediately relegates them back into afterthought. If Halliburton doesn't get hurt and they maintain playing that style that is fun and has a flair to it, then yes, I think they enter into a 3 to 4 year period where they become one of the it teams in the NBA. But there's also a window where then you get the backlash and the fatigue where people are just like, oh my gosh, anybody but. You saw it with the Chiefs. I mean, the Chiefs, basically the Kansas City Chiefs were the NBA equivalent in the NFL because they came out and they had this quarterback that was just doing like crazy things, and just making miraculous play after miraculous play, and they're high flying, and they're scoring a bunch of points, and people loved it. And now it's Jimmy Cook likes them, and everybody else is tired of them, right? There is a fatigue factor that happens.
Mm-hmm.
With the Colts, you had, and I've mentioned this a lot, I will never forget one of the most surreal moments of my life was covering the Colts and going down when they were playing Dallas, and it was the year that they went on to win the Super Bowl. They lost to the Cowboys, but I went there, and I'm literally in Cowboy Stadium in Irving, Texas, the original legendary Cowboy Stadium, and it's 3 hours before game time or 2 hours before game time or whatever it was, and there are 10,000 people in the lower bowl of Cowboy Stadium. Was it Texas Stadium? Is that what it was called? But you know what I'm talking about. Mm-hmm. And they're all lined up. Everybody's lined up just to watch Peyton Manning and Marvin Harrison and Reggie Wayne like working out and going through motions and whatever else. And Terrell Owens comes out and nobody even notices. And I thought to myself, I can't believe what I'm witnessing. The fan base of America's team is being held like hostage by the Indianapolis Colts and the brand of the Indianapolis Colts. And yet that is a football lifetime ago. And now you have a franchise that has been searching continuously for an identity. A lot of its identity was wrapped up in the fun eccentricities of its owner, and that has changed. So I'm very curious when we talked to JP in Jacksonville and as we will do in Pittsburgh coming up, what the thought is of, are the Colts suddenly outside of Indianapolis an anonymous franchise? Are they the Arizona Cardinals? Are they the Atlanta Falcons? Are they the Carolina Panthers? Or do they still have a cachet of a brand about them? Eddie, you would know better than I because, you but then again, so it's hard to believe this. The Colts won the Super Bowl now coming up on 20 years, right? So
yeah,
somebody that was a 10-year-old kid then at the peak of their fandom is now 30 years old. So how many, nationally speaking, people in their early to mid-20s, let's say 18 to 25-year-old guys, to those guys, the Indianapolis Colts have been a middling franchise for the better part of their memory, right?
For the most part, I mean, that's around my age. I'm 26. I turned 27 in September, and I remember, the last years of the RCA Dome and coming to Lucas Oil Stadium in the opening years, and Peyton was still the quarterback, and seeing the sides police quiet offense at work, and
right.
Manning always doing the be quiet and stuff, and that was toward the end of his career, and then obviously lived through the Curtis Painter year and drafting of Luck and all that.
And yes, I guess people would have, remembered the Luck years, but I don't know that anybody can. I shouldn't say that. I mean, were there years when Luck was here where the Colts were considered the elite team and franchise in football?
Because they were always probably that up and coming team.
Correct. Correct. They were always like
the Chargers are now,
right?
Like the Chargers are now in the AFC
West. And have been for 5 years, right?
Yeah.
Now the Chargers, though, are fascinating to me because I think Justin Herbert is a big time. Who was it? Was it Jimmy Johnson that said like last year at the beginning of the year that if he could select any player in the league to build a roster around right now, he would select Justin Herbert?
Might have been him, and I know that was something that Jim Harbaugh had stated to certain people in the national media when he was at Michigan. And that's ultimately why LA went such a hard push, and he probably expressed interest early on when that, whether they decided to part ways finally with Brandon Staley. Also, Jake, we've got another betting scandal. Have you seen this?
Malik Beasley?
So you got Malik Beasley in the NBA, and then Luis Ortiz, former Indianapolis Indian pitcher, today was announced that he's being under investigation by the MLB for gambling, and he's on leave. He's now with the Cleveland Guardians.
I'm going to sound like an old guy here. And I don't have anything against it. The apps and all that. I mean, I've enjoyed them. I've promoted them. I've used them. They're fun. And I think the vast majority of people can do so on a responsible level. With that said, it is so easy to do, to use one. I mean, you go to a sports bar now and you look and guys got their phones out. It's like they're playing Tetris and they're just all over the place, right?
Yep.
And you wonder with athletes, many of which are the age of the people that you see consistently using the apps, how many athletes are doing so that we don't know about. I hate to say that, but you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you absolutely wonder about that. I mean,
he was scheduled to pitch today against the Cubs.
There was a game with Malik Beasley that I saw somebody now retroactively went back. For those unfamiliar, Malik Beasley, Detroit Pistons player, is being investigated for gambling on the NBA.
It was a player prop specifically.
Well, there was one game where Detroit was playing, I don't know, Portland, let's say.
Are you referencing the cover play?
Yes.
That was when he was with Minnesota.
Okay, so
It might have been playing Detroit, actually.
He's on the floor.
Yeah.
The team that he's playing for they are getting 7. And they were down. Actually, I take that back. They were getting 7.5, and they were down 9 with like 4 seconds to go in the game. And they inbounded the ball to Malik Beasley, who sprints to the basket and dunks it basically at the buzzer, making it a 7-point game instead of a 9-point game. And the line was 7.5. And there was a lot of that I think is what started getting things on the radar. And this is not the first player from an NBA standpoint. And yes, like you mentioned the prop bets of other players. There was also a video that I saw of him, quote unquote, and I'm using air quotes here, of Malik Beasley defending a player.
Tyrese?
It might have been Tyrese. And he literally, he doesn't even move. He's standing with his arms out right, and Halliburton goes right around him, and he made no attempt to stop him from scoring. And, I'm sure we will probably hear more about it. And what I mean by that is beyond these two circumstances, unfortunately, there are probably going to be those that we, continue to have stories pop up like this. I don't think it's isolated is what I'm getting at. We come back. Pittsburgh, PA, baby. Steelers are on the schedule for the Colts this year, and we are previewing each of their opponents leading up to, and we're doing 2 today because we're not here tomorrow, leading up to the Colts training camp schedule getting kicked off. Pittsburgh is one of those with lots of storylines, and we'll talk about it with a guy over there in Pennsylvania. We'll do it next. You know, every year the Colts come out with like a marketing campaign. For the Shoe is the one that seems to have stuck. The one year they were Colts Forged. I don't know that anybody really ever understood what that was, but that's when we got the anvil and the banging of the anvil. I think that was all part of the Colts Forged thing. The Pittsburgh Steelers this year apparently all in. Everything's all in with the Steelers. They got Aaron Rodgers because they're all in. They made trades because they're all in. And one guy apparently that's not all in, I don't mean that he doesn't believe necessarily in the Steelers, but in terms of the cliche, he's out on that, at least according to his latest column. Tim Benz joins us on the Rhinegeist Brewery guest line. He is with the Pittsburgh Tribune covering the Steelers and joins us on this Independence Day Eve. Tim, you're not all in, is that right?
I'm not all in on them. I think they'll be a 9-win team roughly again, as they so frequently are. By the way, if the Steelers were to have a slogan, it's, hey, have you heard Mike Tomlin's never had a losing season? I think that's been their slogan for the last 8 years.
Yeah.
But no, I'm not in on the all-in cliche. People say that because it's an easy headline. People say that because it's a quick stinger to set up a conversation on an ESPN chat show with Stephen A. Smith. People say that because it's good copy and it gets social media traction, but it's not true. This trade with Jalen Ramsey seems to have spurned everybody using that phrase, but you know, they picked up a veteran aging cornerback who doesn't have turnover production like he used to for a veteran aging safety who doesn't have turnover production like he used to. You know, they both have great resumes. I'd argue they're both on the downside of their careers. They basically changed out a $100 bill for two 50s. They got a little bit better with Jonnu Smith, but if Jonnu Smith is supposed to be the answer for their lack of a number 2 wide receiver, then I don't think they're better. Then I just think that they're trying to do differently what they did last year when they didn't have a number 2 wide receiver. It's hard for me to argue that team is all in when you make a move that looks like an all-in move in DK Metcalf, and then you trade George Pickens to create that hole at receiver that you just addressed by getting him in the first place. After the draft, by the way, for a 3rd-round pick next year, they got $18 million tied up in four quarterbacks. That's all they cost is $18 million for 4 QBs right now. That's, by the very definition, not all in. They're middle of the pack in the cap. They've got no money mortgaged for next year with the cap. That's not all in. It's a catchy way of saying the Steelers are trying to do things differently, but it's probably smart that they're not all in because they're not good enough.
By the way, Tim, I wanted to have you on the show today so that you could voice strong opinions. Can you try to pick it up a little bit?
Well, listen, man, this has become a thing here in recent years where, you know, there's a lot of frustration from those that cover the team on a daily basis about how the team is perceived outside of Pittsburgh versus how we see it every day. And the Steelers are a great logo. They're a great brand. We were joking about it before, but they don't need kitschy, catchy cliches to sell the team. So, you know, kind of the jersey does most of the work. The emblem does most of the work. And it's had to do work for the last 8 years because no one has a playoff victory to point to. And, you know, a couple bad losses to the Colts upon further review, looking back at their resume in recent years were some of the lower points where people, I was hoping outside of Pittsburgh, might pick up on that and say, hey, wait a minute, these aren't Mike Tomlin's old Steelers in the early 2010s and late 20aughts. It's nothing like that anymore.
You know, Tim, it's interesting that you mentioned that, and I've got an appreciation for you mentioning there's a variation between the outside market perception of a franchise and the inside market perception, right? The Indianapolis Colts are one that I think the franchise takes pride in the fact that they think like people still think of it as the Peyton Manning, Bill Polian, like class Indianapolis Colts. And I'm not saying they don't have class, but they don't have the wins that those groups did. What is the, say, Pittsburgh perception of the franchise of the Indianapolis Colts?
One that they should have beaten each of the last 2 years. One that has reset the barometer of where they've had coaching malfeasance and really, I would say, quarterback-altering views of where they're going direction-wise. Like that loss to the Colts a few years ago ended up resulting in Mason Rudolph getting in there and saving the season before they got rid of him. And then Fields looked human against him. So yeah, I don't think people in Pittsburgh look at the Colts logo and flash back to the 2005 playoff game, or the Peyton Manning days, the game where Peyton came in here and beat them in Acrisure Stadium, what was then Heinz Field. I don't think people in Pittsburgh look at the Colts and see the good old days of, when they were a dominant team and a threat every year to do something in the AFC.
Is Aaron Rodgers potentially an answer to make a push here, or is this the area that the Colts fell into of just kind of rearranging old Band-Aids on a regular?
Yeah, I think it's the latter. The Steelers have now been in this mode not only since Ben Roethlisberger retired, but actually going back to when Big Ben hurt his elbow in 2019. They didn't have an immediate successor there. Mason Rudolph wasn't quite ready, and that threw off the clock. And when they brought back Ben, he wasn't the Ben of old. So we felt like they've been playing without a franchise quarterback, even though Roethlisberger's name was there for 2 of those years since 2019. So and again, that kind of goes back to the all-in thing. I mean, Aaron Rodgers is playing for $13 million or whatever it is. I mean, that's not all that expensive. I think it's just a different version of what they did with Russ last year. And Russ, for all of his faults down the stretch, and there were many in the 0-5 conclusion of the season, he got off to personally a 6-1 start after he came in for Fields when the calf finally healed. So, there are actually 2 months worth of pretty good moments with Russ. The Steelers should be so lucky if they have any 7-game stretch this year where Rodgers guides them to a 6-1 mark. If he does that, well, as the math indicates, the way they played around that stretch with Russ, you go about 500 from there, and you're in the conversation. And I think that's as high as the Steelers are going to go. If they keep Rodgers healthy for 17 games, and the offensive line comes along so that it can protect him long enough that he's not getting hit and knocked around, they might be a 9-10 win team again like they were last year, but I still don't see them winning the division, nor do I see them going on the road and beating a Cincinnati, a Baltimore, a Buffalo, a Kansas City in a playoff game. I don't see that happening.
What's their Achilles? And I know it's really early. I mean, it's July, right? It's the Independence Day Eve here, but if you look at it, the area that by the time it comes around where Indianapolis and Pittsburgh are squaring off, Pittsburgh better have what figured out that is their big question mark going into the season?
Offensive efficiency and identity. I think they are going to go into the season knowing who they are on defense. It's just, is it going to hold up better than it has in recent years, where that defense that flies around the field and looks invincible through September, October, after Thanksgiving, a lot of the older players get tired and don't produce as well. That's probably going to happen again this year. It just has been the way. Offensively, they got to figure out who they are with Aaron Rodgers, and is Aaron Rodgers going to be able to run what Arthur Smith wants to run? Are those two going to be on the same page enough? Because Russ and Smith weren't by the end, and that made things worse. And there's a significant question of, do they have the weapons to be the kind of offense that I think Rodgers is used to? And if they're going to try to be the offense that Smith wants to be, well, then the running backs and the offensive line need to be more cohesive than they were a year ago, because whatever they got running-wise is more about volume than efficiency.
Tim Benz, our guest. You hear his voice right now on the Ryan Geist Brewery guest line. He's with the Pittsburgh Tribune. Tim, before we let you go, I'm curious of this. I've always thought of Pittsburgh as a great sports town. Obviously, it goes without saying. I love the weird anecdote of all of their teams having the same color scheme, for example. They have all won titles. They've all been successful. One of their great athletes and beloved figures in their history, Dave Parker. I know, obviously, the passing of Dave Parker within the last week. So there's a lot of heritage and history in Pittsburgh. And that includes in the ABA where the Pacers were. Has Pittsburgh ever been rumored? Has there ever been discussion, whether it be relocation or expansion? I'm always curious why it's not an NBA city.
It's never seriously been discussed. Every time there's a team that moves, there's an article written, or kind of the way you're talking about, hey, we're a great city, and, is it possible? And all these sorts of things. For a long time, it was never really possible because they played in the old Mellon Arena where the Penguins play, and that was barely efficient enough to keep the Pens there for as long as they did. If they hadn't gotten the new rink, the Pens would be gone too. This is a pretty stretched, thin city for 3 pro sports teams. Going 4 from just a corporate dollars, ticket sales, season ticket standpoint, I think would be stretched very thin. It's not a great basketball town. The college teams, Pitt had a nice little run in the early 2000s, but everything gets swallowed up by the Steelers. The Pens are number 2 so long as Sidney Crosby is here. And should the Pirates ever put it together for an extended stretch, as we saw in 13 through 15, there's still enough old baseball fans and a great park to draw people to that I think a basketball team would be swimming upstream. And I think the bigger deal that nobody really wants to address because it's just complicated to get into is the financial element of, is the consumer base there enough? And I don't think it is because there's this sort of NHL NBA rivalry that exists here.
No, that's fair.
And you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's not even just, hey, we don't know about the NBA, but if it came, we'd sure be on board. There's active NHL fans who hate the NBA because they're jealous of it, and they don't want to see the building, the arena, like I said, the ticket revenue, whatever, get in the way of whatever the NHL team can be. And we're so used to it because we've never had it here, and we've had the Pens since, the late 60s. So, it would be swimming upstream to get an NBA team here.
I just know this. I know that. And I agree with that. It's interesting because Indianapolis, people talk about could Indianapolis do NHL, and I'm like, man, I think it feels like the dollar is stretched already thin enough in this market, and Pittsburgh's a little bit bigger market. If the Pirates put it together, and if they finally, they're of course the parent club of the Indianapolis Indians here in town. If they put talent together and they make a World Series run, I'm going to let everybody know that the only thing I know about the Pirates is that Tim Benz is all in. He's all in on the Pirates. That's what I'm going to go with.
I'm all in on Paul Skeens. I can guarantee you that. I'm all in on Paul Skeens for as long as he's here. And, boy, is he going to make a great Yankee or Dodger in a couple of years.
That's exactly right. The Pittsburgh Pirates, the official farm system of the Dodgers and Yankees. Tim, appreciate it. We'll try to have you on once it actually comes to fruition and these two teams match up. But good perspective. Certainly appreciate it. Enjoy the holiday, all right?
Yeah, give me a call when game week rolls around. That'd be great.
Sounds good. Tim Benz joining us, Ryan Geist Brewery guest line. A deep dish, if you will, on not only the Steelers, but Pittsburgh sports. And that means we can give away yet another pizza because it's not Friday. We typically do that on a Friday, but it's a Thursday that feels like a Friday. So how about right now? 239-1070, the telephone number, if you would like a gift card to Chicago's Pizza. It's been around since 1979, 18 Central Indiana locations. You hear me talking about it all the time, and there is a reason for it. Not only because I love their pizza, I love the quality of the cheese, I love the toppings, I love the variation of the pizzas, I love the lunch buffet, but I also love the principles of Chicago's. You heard me mention it when they decided that they wanted to start doing advertising. They actually asked me to come out and come to one of their locations. That's fairly unusual. And then I did so because they wanted me to meet every single owner of all of the Chicago's pizzas. And it was fabulous, and it was wonderful, and it made me feel connected to them. And that's what you get as a customer as well. You go there, and they treat you like family, and they treat you like part of their community and a community that they love. So we would love for you to enjoy Chicago's Pizza for the weekend. 239-1070, the telephone number, if you would like to do exactly that. Tony East in just under 15. Tomorrow, no show, obviously, for the 4th of July, Independence Day.
I shared what I was doing. Jake, did you share what you were doing on Independence Day?
I don't know what we're doing yet, but I've got to drive over in the evening to Steam Corners, Ohio for the Mid-Ohio race that takes place on Sunday because we're crew call bright and early on Saturday morning. So I'm sure hanging out and then
That's one of those
probably
races
dinner.
that always gets a nice turnout, right?
Yeah, huge crowds. Huge crowds at Mid-Ohio. It's going to be warm, but it is always fun. It is packed. It's always packed there. I mentioned this off the top of the show, but I wanted to revisit it. Tony East going to join us coming up in about 10 minutes or so. When I was growing up in Indianapolis, and you just heard us talking about this with Tim Benz in terms of, the sports in Indianapolis, the teams, the number of franchises, etc. And when I was growing up in Indianapolis, there were, obviously the Indians were here. The Colts didn't move here until I was in the 6th grade. The Pacers were here. College athletics were huge, and so too were high school sports. And in my time, when I think about the very early years of following sports in Indianapolis, local television sports was such a big deal. And the TV sports directors were rock stars. And you had, certainly Jerry Harkness was on WTHR. He was the first African-American sportscaster in Indianapolis, the former Pacer, and a true gentleman. One of the great men that you could ever meet, the late Jerry Harkness. Channel 8 had Chet Kopic, who was a polarizing figure, but also was so popular and just almost outlandish. And then Chet Kopic became, I think, kind of an everyman's man when he got into a contract dispute with Channel 8 and refused to show up for work and claimed it was like mental anguish, and so therefore he wouldn't show up, and it was a big deal. And then you had, at Channel 6, Tom Carnegie, obviously, and then Tom Carnegie with Brian Hammonds, and ultimately Ed Sorensen would take over.
Tom Carnegie,
that's right. Let's take another look at the baseball scores. And then you had, at Channel 13, Don Hine, who spent 33 years at WTHR. He was a 3-time Sportscaster of the Year by the Associated Press and United Press International. He is a member of virtually any sportscasting or sports broadcast Hall of Fame that exists in the state of Indiana. Don Hine grew up in Iowa. He was a multi-sport athlete in high school. As a college basketball player, he played for Norm Stewart at Northern Iowa. Norm Stewart, who would later go on to Missouri. And he became a television sportscaster starting in Peoria for 3 years, where he worked alongside Bob Gregory, iconic weatherman, meteorologist that went to Channel 13 as well. And then Don Hine came to Channel 13, and where he spent over 3 decades. He eventually passed the sports director torch on to Dave Calabro, who joined us earlier in the program to talk about him. That will be available later in podcast form on the station website. And it's not easy, for a Don Hine to have a guy coming in Calabro that everybody and their brother knew was eventually going to replace Don Hine as the sports director. And to pass that torch, it takes a level of humility, a level of humanity, and a level of understanding. And Don Hine, according to Calabro and by all accounts, had all of those things. And I think was a true gentleman in terms of being authentic to who he was. He was later known in his career as the guy that Bob Knight most connected with, and Bob Knight was the most transparent towards. And I think there was an understanding and a reciprocal respect there because Don Hine had played the game of basketball. The Hiner, as people at Channel 13 called him, and I think people within the community called him, was brutally honest in his reporting. He didn't really take a whole lot of beef from anybody. Calabro told the classic story of the time when everybody was waiting after a Pacer game to interview Reggie Miller, and Miller was in the shower and came out and said, "All right, guys, got to go." And Don Hine yelled at him and said, "Look, man, you're an a-hole." And Reggie Miller stopped like, "What?" And it would, then later they both would laugh about it. Reggie Miller would do a show on WTHR. But Don Hine, at the age of 85, confirmed by his daughter earlier today to Rich Nye that Don Hine passed away at the age of 85. He was truly from the old guard of broadcasters, and I think in what is the ultimate compliment to any broadcaster is two things. Number one, that you become a part of the community in which you work. And I don't mean by longevity of simply being on TV every night. I mean by showing a compassion and a passion for the market in which you work. And Don Hine did both of those things. And in addition to that, by staying in Indianapolis after his retirement is testament to what this city meant to him, but what he meant to the city as well through his charitable works and his, as I mentioned, just the honesty and the integrity with which he carried himself. In addition to that, it is so rare in broadcasting, and if you want to know someone's greatness in broadcasting, it oftentimes is defined by when you see somebody whose career comes to an end on their terms. That is so rare. And for Don Hine, it did. He was able to himself retire and then come back and do different duties for WTHR and an emeritus level, and he did so very well, and I know is missed by those from WTHR. And so sympathies to those who obviously knew and worked with him. Dick Mittman is another that was a longtime writer in Indianapolis for the Star News. He was a graduate of Arsenal Technical High School, served in the United States Army, was a Korean War veteran. And Dick Mittman is one that became a passionate writer when it came to motorsports. And if you're a friend of the Indianapolis 500, you were a friend of Dick Mittman, a member of the Old Timers Club. He is another that carried with him the old journalistic scruples and integrity in which he covered things. He did not try to make himself part of the story. He simply covered the story. He didn't make himself a personality. He simply brought out the personality in others by the fashion in which he wrote. Dick Mittman passed away on July the 1st. He is reacquainted with his late wife, Pat, and he is survived by their three children, Randy, Julie, and Rick. And so sympathies and condolences as well to Dick Mittman, who within the scope of what he wrote left his thumbprint on his work and certainly will be remembered and respected by the Indianapolis 500 old-timers and those that have been not only around the race but have been around sports in this town when it comes to ink, print, and barrel. He did it as well as anybody. Tony East will join us next. We will talk about where the Pacers go in the middle from here. Tony East, of course, has been joining us all season long when it comes to the Pacers and the Fever both. It has been a very, very busy stretch for him with Pacers free agency. So, Tony, I'm going to begin with this. We could discuss both. Red Panda as well, for that matter, who my understanding is now out of the hospital, right?
Tragic. Yes, he is.
If to be honest with you, with all, and I've mentioned this many, many a time, with all of the halftime shows that take place, it is amazing to me, almost every halftime show I think to myself, like, how did this person figure out they have this skill, first off?
Yes. My wife asks me this about Red Panda all the time.
Yes. And then, the girl that can do the bow and arrow with her feet backwards, all of it, right?
The speed painter.
Yeah. You do wonder, how much alcohol was involved the first time this was tried, right? But having said that,
our Red Panda theories that we've come up with in our house is she was born in a 40-foot tall warehouse, and they were a crate and barrel distributor, so they had a bunch of bulls around, and one thing led to another.
That's probably true. And the only way to get from one place to the next was on a unicycle, right?
The unicycle we haven't come up with a theory for yet.
But if you had to wager, and I'm not making light of this, I'm being serious because she's done it for so long and been so good at it. If you had to wager on halftime acts that finally would have an incident that would lead one to get hurt, Red Panda would have been the last one you would have picked, right?
Yeah, for real. It'd be that guy who balances on the chairs. That'd have been my first.
Yeah, that's Slottick. Yep.
I can't watch that one. I
can't watch it only because Slottick is still wearing the same tutu tights that he had in 1978. That's my own. You know what I mean? At some point you got to adjust sizes. No,
but everything with height scares me except for Red Panda for some reason. And then it happened, and I'm like, oh man, that would freak me out if I saw it. And then I got a kick out of her representation or whatever being she did not fall. Her unicycle malfunctioned. Obviously, she's too talented to have that happen.
That's right. Yeah,
it's true. She's amazing.
Was it a flat tire?
I think I don't remember exactly. It was something about the left side, mechanical something or another. But
okay.
Yes, they did put that out, which made me smile a little bit.
Okay, let's get to this, Tony. Now that we've had time to, kind of let the dust settle, I will bring up this question, and I don't know that we'll ever know this, okay? Do you believe that the Pacers had any idea that Milwaukee was working like a backdoor angle to try to lure away Miles Turner?
No. They certainly, the way that free agency progressed and the way that everybody that I talked to leading into free agency projected the league. I tweeted the three teams that everybody had an eye on when it came to money in general, and two of them were Turner adjacent at one point, were the Nets because they had a bunch of space, and they used it on Terrence Mann, Michael Porter, and some other stuff. The Hawks, because they had this big trade exception, and they used that on Nickeil Alexander-Walker. And the Pistons, who could have had cap space, but then immediately used some exception stuff on the Bird and then a little bit of Duncan Robinson in there. And I forget what the other thing was they did that made me think, okay, they might not even go under the cap at all. And so at that point, even though Turner had not been agreed to that first night, I thought, well, they're probably doing some tough negotiating because of the tax and stuff like that. But whatever, there's nothing going on that he can even go to. And then they waive and stretch Damian Lillard and trade away picks to get off Connaughton and waive Chris Livingston. It's whoa. If they knew that was coming, or if anybody knew that was coming, how much differently would free agency have gone, not even for the Pacers, but the whole NBA in general. And I do think not even just the Pacers, it was a surprise to everybody that they did that. And they opened up enough space to offer him, at least for reporting, more than the Pacers had offered. And I'll be very curious if we ever find out via truth serum or any other way, if they had a final chance to counter, if some of the reported offers were their final offer, because even to me, in the end, I think if you're the Pacers, you would have matched that to keep him and then tried to move money elsewhere. He's a good player. Clearly, other teams in the league value him at that kind of contract. And so just reading the tea leaves of what happened, I certainly feel like that they were surprised, and everybody was surprised that someone else was able to open up enough money to even offer him that.
Is there any chance, Tony, that the following happened, okay? And Miles Turner, I like. I don't know him. I'm not hanging out with the guy doing Legos with him, but I've been side by side with him a fair number of times. I think it is. I feel very confident in saying that I think Miles Turner is a good person and a good guy, right? With that said, is there any chance that Miles Turner, in the letter that he wrote to the city of Indianapolis, that he knew deep down that was perhaps his farewell pin because he had been rumored in trades one too many times, and he had been deferred in terms of inking him to a long-term deal for one month or one season too long. And he just said, you know what? I want to change the scenery.
I mean, is it possible? Yeah. You always wonder in this situation because no one has talked about this part of his free agency, and for good reason. Like, everybody I talked to expected he'd be back. Some people said that they heard he wanted to be back. I don't know that I heard that myself, but it doesn't mean it's not true. Regardless, this was his first time ever being an unrestricted free agent in his whole career, right? He went to 4 years on his rookie deal, then he was restricted, or he got extended, and then he did the other renegotiation and extension. This is his first time having full, Miles Turner gets to pick my team in his career, and maybe he did want to be with the Pacers. That would have made logical sense to me for him financially and lifestyle-wise, right? And they're a good team, and he's a good player. But also, he's 29, and you never know with the center position how those guys will age, if this is his last chance at a big contract. And, if a different team came with the most money by potentially a good amount based on reporting, I mean, I would love to know truth serum, the order of negotiations and how it ended. But is it possible to me that he knew it was at least on his mind that he could leave? Yeah, I think it's possible. But I think I would also think that maybe he thought that, but still assumed he'd be back because at that time, everybody assumed they'd pay the tax, and then Halliburton got hurt. So much has changed since he wrote that it's almost hard to read into how much his psyche then even matters.
Tony, it appeared that Miles really wanted that fourth year and specifically a player option on that fourth year, but the Pacers did not want to go that far and they wanted to keep him 3. Why would the Turner camp be so adamant on the player option with another year?
Well, I don't know what, Doyle reported the 4 for $95 offer from the Pacers. If they actually did offer a fourth year, we don't know if that was an option year, if it was fully guaranteed or anything. So tough to say with any certainty what that meant. But, if you're Miles Turner, right, people keep saying, oh, he got less than $30 million a year. Everybody kept saying he'd get $30 million. Well, maybe he could opt out of that fourth year if he's still playing well, and maybe he does get $30 million at that time, right? Brook Lopez got 2 years, $50 million at age 35, right? Turner's only 29, and he's replacing Brook Lopez in the same spot right now. You just never know how much that you're going to be worth at a time like that. Player options are so valuable for guys as they get into their low to mid-30s because of that exact stuff. The other part of this that I wonder about is he got a huge trade bonus, right? 15% is huge given how much money is on his contract and that he's a sub-max player. That could end up, depending on when he gets traded, being worth $8 to $10 million, and the Bucks have a very uncertain future. It's certainly possible that they would consider wanting to trade him at some point if Giannis isn't on their team anymore. So it's a lot of money and a lot of commitment from the Bucks, and for the right reasons. He's a good player, right? Clearly, we've acknowledged because of the fact that this agreement happened that there are teams in the league that value Turner at close to $30 million a year, and I think that was one of the ways that the annual value per year could have gone down, is offering that player option. The Bucks were willing to do it. So on the Pacers side, their team is clearly financially outside of Halliburton set up in this Siakam-Halliburton timeline where everybody has 3 years or less left. So you wonder if 3 years could have made sense. And if you sign for less than 3 years, you're not eligible for a contract extension at any time. So I always felt like 3 years was the sweet spot for Turner, but if someone offered a fourth year with a player option, it's so helpful to have that guaranteed money crutch as a player, especially when it comes with the trade bonus of a fully guaranteed deal. So I don't know what the Pacers were or weren't willing to add in as bells and whistles to their deal, but those are very appealing things to Miles Turner specifically.
So let's talk now, Tony. Tony East is our guest, Ryan Geist Brewery guest line. Let's talk about where the Pacers go from here. And I'm going to throw you a couple of names, and you tell me just the likelihood here, right?
Okay.
Isaiah Jackson is one that they have made him a restricted free agent. I have not heard, so you tell me, whether or not, because he's coming off the Achilles as well, are there franchises you believe that could up that price tag that they're going to have to pay for Isaiah Jackson?
I don't think up it significantly. I did hear from a couple people around the league when they issued that qualifying offer that they were surprised the Pacers did that. Which is funny because on one hand, I was surprised too, but on the other hand, the fact that all these teams had interest suggested the Pacers were right to make him a restricted free agent, right? So they could guarantee they'd keep him. But none of them seemed like they would be offering more than, low to mid tens, like $5 million per year-ish, maybe a little less than that, right? So Pacers can afford that. Isaiah Jackson's a good player. It's just you never know how good he'll be coming off of an injury, right? So we'll see what shakes out there. But I would imagine, because of the fact they made him restricted and they have his bird rights and he's good or was good the last time he played, that they would like to have him back and certainly have the upper hand in keeping him.
Thomas Bryant.
Yeah, that one's tougher. I mean, unrestricted, so he can decide where to go next. Fit well with the Pacers, had 2 awesome closeout games in the playoffs, but was, I think, inferior to Tony Bradley in the final 2 series, which who knows how much that matters to them. Like, I think a lot of fans have over-indexed on how important those last 2 series were when it comes to evaluating players. So, the Pacers are under a playoff timeline, and who's better in the playoffs between those 2 guys? I would say most matchups, the answer is Bryant than Bradley. Perhaps he could be back as their backup again. I kind of view both of those guys as third-string centers who happens to be good enough to be low-end backups for the Pacers last year, and perhaps at their price point they could be again. So it's possible he's back because the Pacers need centers pretty badly, but it's not like I wouldn't call that a priority for him or the Pacers or any team right now.
Okay, and then another one I want to refresh for people because this is interesting. The Pacers had James Wiseman, a former number 2 overall pick in the draft. They took a flyer on him. He, for like the 5 minutes he was playing, looked pretty good, and then he had an Achilles rupture, just like Isaiah Jackson, just like Tyrese Halliburton. He was then traded, or his rights were traded to Toronto. He was immediately waived. He has, as I understand it, been rehabbing kind of underneath the Pacers umbrella or within the facility. One would assume that means the Pacers have some sort of like weird almost first right to him or this expectation. Is he somebody that could be in the mix?
It's possible, right? If we're asking what Isaiah Jackson will look like coming off of an Achilles injury, the same question has to be asked of James Wiseman, who pre-injury was not as good as Isaiah Jackson and now is coming off the same injury as him. It's also the second significant injury of James Wiseman's NBA career. So it's fair to wonder how good he'll be, but he is huge, man. And clearly they had interest in him because they signed him to a guaranteed contract last year, right? And he's been in the building for a while. They've done that with other players before. Edmund Sumner rehabbed in their facility. He never played for the Pacers again after his Achilles injury a couple of years ago. So you don't know that for sure. And they do have to be careful about how they spend their money because of the tax. And giving guaranteed money to a guy coming off of his second major injury might be tough. But again, clearly they liked him. They brought him in last year. So of all their internal guys, it's possible, and he's been around. But I don't know that might be like their last move of the summer instead of first like last year.
You know, when you look, Tony, at, and I want to get your thought on this. I've gone back and forth on this just in terms of all of the ripple effects of the injury to Tyrese Halliburton. And, first and foremost, as I always say, you feel for Tyrese Halliburton as a person because that's a lot of expectation and a lot, I think, and I hope this isn't the case, but I think Tyrese Halliburton deep down feels like he let people down. And I'm like, look, man, it was an injury. It happens, right? And you want him to come back on his time. But at the same time, that injury does have an impact on the Pacers' timeline. And it feels like everything got shifted now like 18 months at minimum. And you're just kind of in a holding pattern of where you go from there. If the clock restarts on a championship window with a healthy Halliburton, let's say 18 months from now, that does what in terms of their key players in trying to lock them down for another 3 years beyond that? In terms of does that make sense what I'm saying?
No, it does. It does. I think that's what what next season's kind of about is, of course, developing everybody, like even older players, getting them better, seeing what skills they can get better at that would make them fit in 18 months or make them better in 18 months, but also like rejiggering your contract situation to see how you can have a flexible, nimble team that is able to improve or add more talent when that time comes. And that's what makes the season the upcoming one season that's before that 18-month time, so fascinating to me. Like, they should prioritize development in some ways, right? They clearly their ceiling is way lower, right? But you have good players in your team. Like, you can't just tank. So there's obviously a balance between those two things that we've seen a million times. It's just really hard to strike that and find if you do chase that balance, like how much are you actually improving your team for 2 years from now? If you're developing a guy and he's not going to be around beyond next year, are you wasting your time, right? So it's just a really, really tricky kind of through line to follow as the Pacers of what you want next season to look like. And that's why it's going to be a kind of odd couple months or a year and a half where you could see them do lots of stuff that might kind of seem weird, but it's all future-y focused and money focused. And so I don't know what they do. Like, I've thought a lot about next year, and I've heard the term gap year a lot, and disagree that that's even possible. Like, they're too good for that. But, like, what do you do instead if
I know.
Like, because being good, okay, you're the 7th seed or whatever, like, I guess that's fine, but, like, how much development do you really get out of that? It's just it's so hard. And there's a lot of teams, the Celtics, now the Bucks who are doing drastic things, the Pelicans, who are all dealing with the same thing. It's very funny that all these teams that are dealing with this reality of key player Achilles tear have made significant, or lost in the Pacers case, but really significant, like, franchise-changing moves in the last, like, 10 days.
You know, Tony, man, the real buzzkill in all of it, other than Cleveland, look at the East. Could it be any more wide open this year? I mean, of all years, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah, it's funny because people throw around the word dynasty too much in the NBA now, but, like, Tyrese Halliburton is healthy next year. I mean, Cleveland's pretty good. Maybe the Knicks are a little better with Mike Brown, or the Hawks with all this new talent. But, like, clearly the Pacers enter as a top 4 team, right? Like, it wouldn't even have been disputable to me. And now it's like, man, I mean, the East is also so bad that even without Halliburton, you'd imagine the Pacers are top 7, 6, something. So it's just such an impossible balance to strike.
So are we done in terms of the free agency conversation? Isaiah Jackson is the other question mark. But then after that, I mean, and I feel like this free agent class, you know, we get so excited for free agency, right? And to me, it kind of –
who's we?
I'm just like basketball fans in general, and the conversation of like, oh, free agency, let's, you know, the dominoes are going to fall, and look at all this money that's going to happen. And then this year's free agency class felt like when you get super excited for the day after Thanksgiving sales and like the big 60% slash discount, and then you go in and you see the products on sale and you're like, well, no wonder. It felt like this letdown free agency class. Like there just wasn't a lot out there to begin with. So from the Indiana standpoint, it feels like it's kind of over, right?
It's tricky. So kind of, right? Yes, in that a lot of the big stuff's gone. Like the only starting caliber center left is Al Horford. Like, does that even make sense for the Pacers? It doesn't really make sense for their current or long-term plans, even though he's a good player and probably fits their system. So outside of that, like, what are they doing? But I don't think maybe they can, right? Maybe they're like, okay, let's just screw it. We're good enough that we can run a young guy as our starting center to start next season. We're okay with that. But I feel like they need someone like at that spot still, whether that's via trade or some other creative maneuver that I haven't seen yet, because it's hard to develop if you're like playing bad players around the guys you're developing. So I wonder still if, you know, usually the order of free agency events is first all the good free agents go, and after Turner and Duncan Robinson are done. Like, I would say, depending on what people think of Chris Paul and Al Horford, every starter level player is done. Usually the signings happen, then the trades happen in terms of the order of free agency, because teams would prefer to add somebody without trading stuff away. So it's possible to me the Pacers are searching down the trade rabbit holes of getting a 5. You know, they don't have to necessarily send out a player to do so because they could use their mid-level exception as a trade exception. But even that is pretty challenging. So I'll be very curious to see if they're done or not. But it would be very interesting if they just go into the season with basically the same team as last year minus Turner and Albert for the coming season, because that's like a very much a what are you doing this year kind of team, even though they're clearly good enough on paper to do something.
Tony East is our guest, Ryan Geist Brewery guest line, where, of course, you are hearing him right now. Locked On Pacers as well as Forbes WTHR. I saw you were just on the other night, so a number of places where you can see and read Tony's work. Let's shift gears real quick to the Fever, and that, of course, the storyline that Caitlin Clark is. Now, that's the second time that I've introduced the subject, and you've had this exasperated sigh. Everything going okay?
It's just like, it's always, like, it's so fun to watch. I love the WNBA, I always have, but it's never about the games with them. It's so frustrating. It's so frustrating because they're a good team with an important homestand of basketball. And I'm not saying you were going to ask about non-ball stuff. Like Caitlin Clark's injury is the biggest story for the team. I would love to talk about that. It's always something with them, and it's wearing me down. I can't lie.
What now? Tell me what exactly specifically is wearing you down. Like which storylines are wearing you down?
No, I can't. I don't believe that some of these people are real. Like some of the stuff people want to talk about or like think is going wrong or think need to be discussed, or it's just like, this is really how you consume sports. This is really what you think about it. Like every single thing that happens that becomes a non-basketball storyline with them, it's like, it just seems so ridiculous to me. And maybe this is what it was like for young LeBron or LeBron when he was on every team. Like Caitlin is that level of popularity and draws that many eyeballs. It's just just feels so different this year than last year. We're just like normal basketball stuff gets spun into something huge every single time. It's so weird to me. It's like, is this really what's enjoyable about
So
sports
you think
to
there's
guys?
so what you're saying is that there are, and I'll just say it, like there are trolls out there that
No.
What's that?
I don't think they're trolls. Trolls that don't bother me because it's so obvious what they're doing. I think these is like really how people think.
Well, what I'm
about-
saying is,
about
I
the
think
team.
there are people that don't regularly cover the WNBA, that don't regularly follow women's basketball, that stoop to the level of trolldom, if that's a word, by picking a presumptive storyline or almost a made-up one of what is impacting the team because they have the most polarizing player on their roster, and therefore,
true.
from afar, they are creating what they believe to be a storyline, even though they're not anywhere within like 7 zip codes of reality.
Yes, that is a fair way of putting it. It's just like, do you watch other games or other sports? Like, this is very routine sport interaction, and then it becomes this huge, I don't know. I'm on a soapbox right now. I'll get off. Ask me what you're going to ask me. Caitlin's not playing tonight.
What's the biggest non-basketball storyline to the Indiana Fever? No. The Caitlin Clark, I mean, obviously, yesterday, to your point, Tony, I walked outside. It was a beautiful day, and I'm walking around Monument Circle, and I saw a family from Pittsburgh, family of 4 from Pittsburgh, and they had 2 kids, and I said, well, what brings you guys to town? And the guy said, well, it's our daughter's birthday trip, because for her birthday, she wants to come see Caitlin Clark play. And he was aware of the fact that there was the possibility she was not going to play. And at that time, it hadn't been made official yet that she was out. When they say day-to-day, are we realistically thinking day-to-day here? And in addition to that, I thought they played so well and so balanced against Minnesota. Does that then become a challenge when the day comes that she is then put back into the lineup?
I do believe she's day-to-day. I think the extra gravity, let's say, of the Commissioner's Cup championship game made them, maybe be a little more aggressive in considering her status, which is why she was a game-time decision for that one and is out for this Aces game. But just being able to see her these last 2 days, I could see her working after practice yesterday and at shoot-around this morning, like being involved with that second group a little bit as they kind of did some drills. My suspicion would that be that she's not out too much longer. I mean, that is just a suspicion, but yeah, that's the next part for them to figure out, right? Is I would say their 2 highest quality in terms of like, wow, their team level in this game was fantastic. Wins this season were a Storm win they had on the road about a week ago, and that Minnesota win that just happened 2 days ago. In one of those games, Caitlin was quite poor in Seattle, and then she's been out since that game. And the other one, she didn't play at all. And that's not to say they're better without her. Quite the opposite. They're much better when she plays. It's just that they have found in those games great levels from Aaliyah Boston and Kelsey Mitchell, and then gotten something on defense in that Minnesota game. That's what we need to figure out when Caitlin does come back, is blending those things, right? Making sure Kelsey Mitchell, who is playing awesome after a slow start, is at her best, and Boston can continue to be her best when Clark is back, and then making sure their defensive level can maintain. Like the last 3 quarters of that Minnesota game, maybe the best 3 quarters of consecutive defense the Fever have played, like in my time covering them. I don't even know if that's a stretch. They were awesome in that game.
They were very concerned about Red Panda after the game, too, which I thought was cool, right?
Me too. My parents are not like huge pro basketball people, and they were texting me about it. I was like, oh, that means this is a big deal story if my parents are very curious about a basketball game event involving Red Panda.
It was just the wrist, though, right? So, like, she's expected to make a full recovery?
It sounds like she'll perform next season, right? Didn't they put a statement out about that?
I think that's right, yeah. Her music's copyrighted. Don't try using it. Did you know that?
Is it really?
Yes.
I guess I've never heard it anywhere else besides her performance.
So I read a thing about it. The music that Red Panda put, for those that don't know, Red Panda is the halftime show of the woman on the unicycle that flips bowls from her feet to her head. It's truly remarkable.
Was that a Mad Lib that you just said? What was?
Yeah, kind of, right? So she has a music that, it sounds like it is kind of a stereotypical, authentic Asian music because she is of Asian descent, but it's very catchy. It's very, when you hear it, you know exactly what it is. And there is a whole thing out there of people trying to figure out what the song is, and nobody knows, only that it's copyrighted to her. And my understanding is that if you try playing it or broadcasting it anywhere, an actual panda does show up at your house to let you know you're being sued. It's true.
She is the best.
I
don't know what her fee is for performances, but it should be higher.
So you're going with her over Quick Change as GOAT?
I do love Quick Change. I love Christian Scooby. That's probably my top three.
No, wait, who was the other one? Christian Scooby?
Yeah, the dog duo that he dunks and sends in the ball and stuff.
Oh, yeah. He's cool. Yeah.
He's great.
All right.
I don't know.
Cool.
Once you've seen them all, it's kind of like Red Pandas is the best and everything.
Well, have you
else.
seen the new one? There's two of them this year. There's the one fella that looks like he's some sort of like Bulgarian weightlifter, and then he puts a pole on his shoulders and he just stands.
Oh, yeah.
And this woman goes
That's
up to the top
crazy.
and slides down it, and I don't know who has the harder job there, right? Because like 5 different occasions you feel like she's gonna fall, right?
The firecracker, the jump rope girls are also
okay. They're good, yeah. The other one that's new this year that I saw was this guy and it's a man and a woman. And I'm going to assume that they're romantically involved only because they do this roller skating bit that uses, I don't even know how to describe it, but like they hold onto ropes and fling each other around on roller skates, and it's very erotic. And I the only thing I can think is there's no way that these two people are not romantically involved, because there's no way that anybody's significant other would allow somebody to do that in this routine, right? It's like a Danielle Steele book on roller skates. Now, if you haven't seen it, then trust me, you'll know when you see it. You'll be like, yeah, okay, I totally get what Jake was talking about. The
other heights one that freaks me out that I forgot to bring up earlier is the guys who are doing backflips on pogo sticks. I'm like, oh my gosh, like how have you gotten hurt?
Well, and then those guys, they're like X game type looking dudes, right?
Yes, they are.
Yeah. Yeah, that's another. That one's not easy or not hard to figure out where that came about. You know what I mean? They're like, well, they look like they're from California. You can put 2 and 2 together. All right, Tony, appreciate it as always, man. Enjoy the holiday weekend.
Have great chatting as always.
All right, Tony East joining us on the Rhinegeist Brewery guest line. We come back. It's a Thursday. Feels like a Friday. You know what that means? It means it's time for a Franciscan Health Feel Good, Good for the Heart Friday. And it's not really a sports story I've got today, but it's one that I will admit I saw it and I got a little choked up because it was a happy story. I'll tell you about it next. Ready for many of you having a 3-day weekend. Perhaps you're going to be on the golf course. Of course, you can be out on the golf course getting set for our golf outing taking place on Thursday, August 7th. This is going to be at the Legends Golf Club. We'll be out there. When I say we, I mean those of us from the station. Jeff Rickard, Kevin, myself, JMV. I think James Boyd's scheduled as well, although it's during Colts camp, so that remains to be seen. He may have Colts duties with that. But this is all to help out the Franciscan Foundation, which is making a meaningful impact, of course, in helping out people throughout central Indiana. Franciscan Health, again, August 7th, 10 o'clock in the morning, Legends Golf Club. If you would like to join us, all the information available on our station website. And Franciscan Health, you hear me talking a lot about Franciscan Health because I'm a huge believer in what they do and how they go about doing it. And that, of course, meaning heart health primarily. Each and every Friday, I bring you a Franciscan Health Feel Good, Good for the Heart Friday. But today is Thursday. But I figured, you know what? I know that we're not doing a Feel Good, Good for the Heart Friday per se today, but I'm going to do one anyway just because every once in a while I see a story that I say to myself, this story more people need to know about this because I just love everything about it. And I figured why not tie it in, even though it's a Thursday, with Franciscan Health. And, of course, you can find out more about heart scans. Dave, that brought me in a license plate today for the Pacers that at the very beginning of the show. We were sitting here talking, and Dave said, yeah, actually, you know what, Jake? I ended up getting a heart stent because I heard you talking about the heart scans. Eddie, you were the witness to it. He was talking right here about it.
Yes, he did.
He said, I didn't even think that I needed to get a stent, but I went and got a heart scan because I heard you talking about it and found out that I had 70% blockage in my heart. And so they went ahead then and gave me a stent and got me on the right path. And those kinds of stories, I'm so appreciative that I'm given the opportunity to help people out in that regard. But it's really Franciscan that's doing the real work. Franciscan Health, of course, their cardiac screening is easily available, franciscanhealth.org, where you can find out the information. Just $49. You can self-refer. You can pay out of pocket if you'd like, and you get a heart health risk assessment with it. It is non-invasive, takes 10 or 15 minutes, super easy to do. You simply cannot afford to not do it from Franciscan. So the other day, I'm sitting around, and, you get these stories that pop up on your phone or whatever, and there was one that I found interesting because I thought to myself, is this a story about a video store? Like, who in 2025 still owns a video store? It wasn't a local story, admittedly, but it impacted me. It reached me. It kind of choked me up. And the story that I saw originally was done on the CBS Morning News from Pocatello, Idaho. And I have a cousin that lives there, and I called her and I said, have you ever been to this store? And she's like, oh my gosh, I'm there like twice a week. It's a convenience store. What does a convenience store have to do with a video store, and why would a guy in Indianapolis radio be talking about it? Well, here's the deal. The Video Stop was your old school video store, like a Blockbuster, Hollywood Video, any of those, where you go in and rent DVDs and rent movies. Now, I can't imagine that any of these stores would have survived starting even as recently as 5 years ago, let alone even 10. Now that, of course, in the streaming and, the downloading era that we live in. How many people even have a DVD player anymore, let alone a VCR, right? Well, the Video Stop in Pocatello, Idaho, that reality certainly came calling, right? And the fact that, how in the world are we going to continue to carry on? But for the owner of the Video Stop, he had a bit of a predicament. David Craning is the owner of the store. And I actually called yesterday, tried to get him to come on the show. They were super nice. I said, oh, yeah, and I still want to get him on, actually, to talk about exactly this. He kept the Video Stop open even well beyond when he probably should have because of one customer. And there were often days where Christina Cavanaugh was his only customer. But it was like clockwork that Christina would come in every day at 3:30 p.m. Because Christina, who is 35 years old, lives with her mother, Tony. And Tony's job now in retirement is essentially helping and raising Christina, who is nonverbal, has intellectual challenges, Down syndrome amongst others, and Christina, as her mom says, doesn't ask for really anything in life. But what she does ask for, the one thing that she always asks is that each day at 3:30 she can go and rent a movie. And she watches that movie at night while she has her dinner, and this is her routine. And routine is very important to her. It's a comfort. It's a safety. And that routine of renting a movie every day is what Christina, each day when she gets up in the morning, looks forward to. Because she's made that known to Tony, and they have their own way of communicating, of course. And Tony was aware that Christina's routine is about going and getting a movie. It's what gets her through each day. And, of course, at the video stop, you have a video store, and guess what? Probably nobody else has that routine. So Dave kept the store open as long as he could because he knew, if nothing else, that it was important for Christina to be able to come in and get her movie each and every day. And yes, her mom went out and just bought copies of the movies themselves, but no. For Christina, it was about the simple journey of getting in the car with her mom, riding the 1 mile to the video stop, renting the movie, and going home. And using her own $2 to do so every day and feeling that worth of being a part of that community. And for Dave, eventually enough was enough and he had to close. And Tony didn't know what she was going to do because this has been a routine since Dave was in high school and his father owned the video stop, so he knew about the routine itself. But attached in the strip mall where the video stop is a convenience store. That convenience store is also where Tony would often go in and get her gas and other such things. So you can imagine her delight and the nature in which it touched her when she went into the convenience store, probably to buy chips or some sort of a snack for Christina, to then be able to explain to Christina why the video tradition was no longer going to be around and that custom of her daily routine was not available to her. When she went into the convenience store and noticed that in a corner of the store, labeled as Christina's Corner, was the shelving, not a lot of it, but enough of it, from the video stop where Dave managed to pick the 30 to 40 titles that Christina has as her favorites and part of her rotation of the last 15 to 20 years. And he moved those over to the convenience store from the video stop, so that even though no one else needs to rent those movies, that corner is there, and that familiarity and that routine continues. And Christina, each and every day, is able to bring her $2, sign for her movie, and then eat her dinner. Because sometimes for people, it's the little things. It's the little traditions. It's the little customs that create comfort. And for Christina, who is nonverbal, there is one thing that she has figured out how to say, and it's thank you. And she says it every day at 3:30 when she gets her movies, and something that will continue simply because someone like Dave was thinking about and had the compassion for others. I saw the story. It's not sports related, but it did make my heart feel good. And if you would like for your heart to feel good and continue in that path, Franciscan Health, the best place to do it, starts with a heart scan. As simple as that, just $49. You can always Google Franciscan Health to find out more about that in terms of their heart screening. FranciscanHealth.org. John is up next. We'll hand it off to him. We'll figure out what he's got lined up on this, the penultimate day of the week, but the final day of the week in terms of our shows here on The Fan. by the way, tickets to give away still for Dave Matthews, correct, Eddie?
Yes, July the 11th, a week from tomorrow. Ruoff.
By the way, speaking of concerts, you know that next week you get a very limited dose of me. I'm sure you're thrilled about that, right?
Yes, I am. Of course, Wednesday we will not have a show because
Correct.
the Fever are playing at noon, but I'll be on the air still at 11:45 with pregame coverage, and then shortly after that with postgame coverage, and then once we're done, should be somewhere around 2:30. JMV will take over and do, either a half hour extra, 45 minutes extra, or 15 or whatever of his show Wednesday.
And then Thursday, so Wednesday night I am flying to England for that Oasis concert. I only mention it because we have Dave Matthews concert tickets to give away right now at 239-1070. Caller number 3 will be on their way. But I bought, and this is probably like super cheesy, I have no idea, but Manchester, England is only a 45-minute train ride from Liverpool. So my cousin and I, and it's going to be a struggle because we land at 8:30 in the morning. When you fly over there, it's basically a red eye. You land at 8:30 in the morning, and we're going to drop off our bags at the hotel, whatever else. Of course, you can't check in yet. And that first day, you got to kind of fight through, so you got to get some sleep on the plane. We're doing a tour of a Beatles tour, a Beatles bus tour in Liverpool of all the hot spots, including Eleanor Rigby's resting place, the Caravan Club, all of it. Next week, that'll be Thursday and Friday. So Derek and Greg Rakestraw, I believe, are tag teaming the Thursday, Friday shows. No show for us Wednesday because of the Fever. J&V and I did not plan it, but we're wearing matching shirts today, which is very cute.
We do. What's the penguin?
It's just a penguin.
What brand is the penguin?
Penguin.
Cool. I like that.
I think it
That's
actually
a
is
good-looking
called
shirt.
Penguin.
That's a good-looking shirt.
The penguin.
This is courtesy of the Goodwill in what the hell, Geist.
That's what you got to do.
Yeah, that's where I got to go.
I think I told you one time I went to Vegas for Guns N' Roses, but I wanted to still work out, and I forgot to bring workout clothes, so I went to the Goodwill, bought shorts and T-shirt, worked out, and then washed them and took them back. $2.
Well, I don't have anything to wear anymore, so that's, I got I can wear my, fat ass clothes, but I choose not to.
You'll be swimming in them, right?
Yeah. So
what's on the big show today, John?
We'll do Rich Nye. You had Calabro on a little bit earlier.
Yep.
We want to obviously the legacy of the legend of Don Hine. Respect that and talk that up. Shaka Smart, Marquette's head coach. Richie McKay, who was the head coach of Talon Peter at Liberty. Tucker Barnhart, who just retired from Major League Baseball after an awesome career, and Mike Chappell. We'll talk about Dick Mittman, I'm sure, somebody he worked with for a number of years as well, and also passed away. So we lost a couple of legendary sports figures here.
I mentioned earlier, I was talking about both those guys.
Mm-hmm.
John, I guess we could tag team this response of a text I got.
Tag team back again.
I got a text that says, hey, just wanted to let you know, we live in a now society. If anybody cares about these guys, they could Google a lot of it. I don't want to hear anything about somebody who lived and did something 35 to 40 years ago, and basically nobody else does.
Who's this person?
If it happened before 2005, it's irrelevant 20 years later. Nobody cares about anything. I love what you do normally on the show, but I want you to stick around, so don't talk about this stuff from 35 years ago.
Who is it?
I don't have the name, just to listen.
Tell that person to piss off. Seriously, piss off. You go ahead and go someplace else and piss off.
I mean, I'm like
100%.
Yeah.
Jackass right there. Needs his ass whipped. Seriously. Does this person want his ass whipped?
That's why I teed it up for you.
I mean, who cares what you care? I mean, who cares, jackass? We're respecting somebody that had a great deal of influence for decades.
No question.
In this market.
33-year career in the case of Don Hine and Dick Mittman.
Hey, text him back and say piss off from me. Say, JMV says piss off.
All right, I'll do it right now. See what he says, right? I knew that'd get you fired up, though. I wanted to get you fired up out of the gate
that
here,
stuff
right?
does, because that's just ridiculous. And who gives a damn what you think anyway, jackass? Seriously. Who cares?
What do you got planned for the 4th? Anything?
I'm going to get incredibly drunk tomorrow at Paradise Day Watson, which is not too far from where Eddie Garrison's parents live.
That's cool.
So if I get wheeled in a wheelbarrow across the road tomorrow, you'll know I had a hell of a time.
All right, fair enough.
I can't wait, man. Hey, good luck. You going to Manchester, England?
Well, I'm not going till
You're going to go
the
see the Duran Duran library?
Do they have one there?
I don't know. They're from Manchester, England, aren't they?
Are they from Manchester? I thought I thought they were from Birmingham, England. They might be.
Maybe they. You know what? They may be from Birmingham. Not Alabama.
I'm not going until Thursday, Friday.
But England.
I'm not
Yes.
going until the end of the week. So I mean,
that's going to be fun. Now, do you think that Noel and Liam will keep it together long enough for you guys to get to see him?
So my cousin's already told me that because we're going to shows on Friday and Saturday, my cousin already told me that if something happens and they cancel the Saturday show, we're going to go to the women's final at Wimbledon.
That's awesome.
That's my cousin literally
I don't know who the hell would be playing, but yes, that's awesome.
My cousin's like,
I
let's
think
just go.
Coco
Let's go to
Gauff got
Wimbledon.
knocked out in round 1, so yeah. He was at Martina Navratilova and Hana Nevada. I can't wait. I'd go watch that in a second.
That's Steffi Graf.
That's it.
That's
hey,
right.
who was your favorite back in the day?
Oh, Gabriella Sabatini, buddy.
I did like.
Listen, when Gabriella Sabatini would start sweating a lot, it's like, okay, this must see TV.
What, Argentina was Gabriella.
Yes,
Remember
yes.
how we knew all these tennis players back then?
I mean, yes. In all honesty, Chris Evert and Navratilova obviously was a great rivalry. Steffi Graf was really fun to watch. On the guy side of things, Boris Becker was great to watch.
That's where he evolved.
Michael Chang was great.
Yep.
I mean, it was, Connors and McEnroe goes without saying. Pat Cash. I remember when my favorite headline of all time, Pat Cash beat Yvonne Lindell in the Wimbledon final, and the headline said, Cash is better than a Czech.
Well,
Still
remember,
the best
he
line
climbed and got into, wasn't there a headline that said, Pat Cash wins Wimbledon and climbs into the Queen's box or something like that? I think so. Seriously, because I think he didn't he climb up and
that seems
I think
dangerous on multiple levels.
I think that was the headline, man. I go,
that's
wow.
International incident on several ways there. All right, John's up next. He will carry you home until 6 o'clock tonight, and we will be back with you on Monday. Have a wonderful Independence Day. We'll talk to you later.